Hi guys, tonight we step together onto a frozen stretch of prairie, the kind where the wind moves like a living blade and the horizon feels impossibly far away. You breathe in, and the cold hits the inside of your nose so sharply that you wonder how any human being could sleep out here without becoming a popsicle by dawn. In fact, you probably will not survive this if you go in without learning the tricks that generations of native peoples mastered long before insulated jackets and double-pane windows existed. This moment, right here, is you arriving at the edge of their world. It demands respect, patience, and a willingness to slow down. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you are listening from tonight, along with your local time. Now, dim the lights, and you step fully onto the frosted earth, hearing the faint squeak under your boots, as if snow itself is warning you that you need to be smart about what comes next. The sky is deep blue and studded with stars so sharp they almost sting to look at. You pull your layers close, but it is still not enough. Your breath drifts in front of you in thick clouds, curling and fading as the night grows colder. The wind is low for the moment, but you can already feel it pushing gently at your clothes. You think about the people who lived here long before fences and highways. People who looked at this exact landscape and figured out how to sleep in it comfortably. You realize that the tipi waiting ahead of you holds centuries of experiments, discoveries, and tiny adjustments that turned raw hide and wooden poles into an engineered structure that could defy brutal cold. As you approach, your footsteps slow. The tipi stands like a warm lantern against the darkness, glowing faintly from the fire inside. Its conical shape feels both elegant and sturdy, rising from the earth as if grown rather than built. Snow piles at its base, smoothed by careful hands. You notice right away that the entrance is small. At first, you assume it is an inconvenience, but then it clicks. A small entrance means less heat escapes. This is one of those quiet, clever bits of knowledge that does not need a lecture. You just sense it. And even though this is a mainstream fact in architecture now, with similar designs used in modern thermal structures, you feel a little thrill knowing it was perfected long before insulation manuals existed. You lift the flap and step inside. A wave of warmth rolls over you, gentle but noticeable. It smells like wood smoke, hides, and human presence. The fire is low, steady, almost shy. Its glow dances along the poles, sending soft shadows spiraling upward. You lower yourself onto the packed ground and immediately notice the temperature difference. Outside is a punishing world of ice. Inside feels like a sanctuary, not tropical, not sweltering, but enough to let your bones loosen. You inhale slowly, letting the heat work its way through your clothes. Your heartbeat settles. You hear the crackle of the fire, the faint rustle of hide walls moving with the breeze, and you picture families gathering like this, night after night, in conditions you once thought impossible for comfort. Historians still argue whether early winter camp layouts were designed purely for practicality or if spiritual considerations guided tipi placement. But either way, the result was a system that balanced weather, terrain, and cultural rhythm. A soft draft curls upward through the smoke hole above you. The hide walls breathe in a way modern houses do not. They let air move, let moisture escape, let warmth settle where it is needed. And here is a quirky little tidbit you would never guess. Some winter camps use snow itself as a sealing tool. Pressed snow tightens the base of the lodge, keeping warmth in while still allowing the structure to flex. You cannot help smiling at the idea that frozen water, which feels like the enemy out there, becomes an ally in here. You sit closer to the central hearth and feel how it shapes the space. The heat does not blast, it radiates in slow pulses. You imagine bedding arranged around it, bodies cocooned in furs, children drifting to sleep, while adults share stories that coil upward with the smoke. Every object here has a purpose. Every placement has a reason. The entire lodge feels like someone whispered science into its bones but never bragged about it. You try stretching your hand toward the fire. The warmth is modest but constant. A perfect equilibrium. Too much flame, and you smoke everyone out. Too little, and you freeze. This calm middle ground is what generations perfected. It is peaceful enough that your eyelids already feel heavier, as if the tipi senses what you need. You glance at the hide covering again. You can see faint seams where pieces were stitched carefully, almost invisibly, with sinew that shrinks slightly in cold weather. That tightening effect helps block drafts and makes the lodge warmer, a natural reaction of material to climate. There is no plastic, No metal insulation, no electricity buzzing in the background. Instead, you have materials shaped by hands that understood the land intimately. Another breath, and you feel the softness of the ground under the first layer of mats. It is firm but not biting. Raised slightly from the frozen earth, it creates a buffer zone and helps hold warmth. You can imagine someone adding more layers as needed, adjusting for the severity of the night, always listening to the whisper of wind around the lodge. You take a moment to appreciate the silence. Out there, the cold was loud. It made your teeth clench. It made the sky feel sharp. In here, the warmth softens the world. Even your thoughts slow down. That is part of why people slept well in these lodges. The environment encouraged it. The flicker of fire becomes hypnotic. The deep breathing of the hide walls matches the breeze. And you feel yourself melting into the space, as though you have stepped not only into shelter, but into the memory of generations who knew exactly how to make winter feel like a companion rather than an adversary. Your shoulders drop. Your breath deepens. You sense that the night ahead will teach you many more secrets. But for now, you simply sit, letting your body thaw, realizing how profoundly intelligent these structures were. They were not just buildings. They were living systems, designed through observation, patience, and trial. And as the warmth settles deeper into you, you understand why people could sleep soundly in sub-zero cold without fear. You stay seated for a long moment, letting the warmth seep deeper into your fingers before shifting slightly and taking in how the entire interior seems to glow with a quiet confidence. The fire crackles again, and you notice how the shadows tremble across the hide walls like gentle brush strokes. When you finally lean back and stretch your legs toward the hearth, you begin to sense what the first night inside a winter tipi must feel like for someone new to it. There is a strange mix of relief and curiosity, the kind that makes you want to curl up immediately and also examine every clever detail of the lodge at the same time. You look up. The poles rise above you like the ribs of a giant animal, converging at the smoke hole that lets just enough heat escape while keeping the structure breathable. You feel a soft stream of warm air swirl gently around your face before rising toward the opening. This subtle movement reveals one of the most fundamental tricks of sleeping warm here. The tipi does not fight the cold. It negotiates with it, using shape and airflow to bend winter into something manageable. It is a quiet, brilliant act of engineering that predates most written architectural theory. You shift your position again, and as you do, you realize something interesting. The conical shape funnels heat downward, rather than letting it pool aimlessly at the top. Your body sits in the sweet spot where warm air gathers. Much later, architects would point out similar patterns in certain European Iron Age dwellings, but here it feels far more refined. The shape lets the fire breathe and lets you breathe too, without choking on smoke. A bit of wind nudges the outer wall, and you hear an almost musical rustle. The entire lodge flexes with the breeze, moving with the world instead of resisting it. There is a quirky little detail you may not expect. That slight swaying actually helps shed frost and snow from the outer covering. If the lodge stayed rigid, ice might form thicker on the surface. But because it moves softly with each gust, it shakes off some of the build-up. It is like the lodge is alive and doing a tiny winter shimmy to keep itself comfortable. Your eyes drift to the entrance flap. Just beyond it lies the frozen prairie, the one you crossed not long ago. Out there the wind claws, bites, and whispers threats. In here it is a different planet. You lean a bit closer to the fire and notice how its light flickers in a steady, relaxing rhythm. Nothing frantic, nothing chaotic, just a calm pulse. That low, controlled burn is no accident. The fire is kept small for a reason. A tipi holds heat incredibly well, and a big flame would overwhelm the space quickly. Historians still debate whether winter fire management was standardized across different plains nations, or if each family developed its own rhythm. Some accounts describe nighttime fires kept as embers almost immediately after darkness fell, while others describe a slow, deliberate adding of small sticks through the night. The truth probably varies from camp to camp, season to season, but the underlying principle is the same. Fire is a partner, not a spotlight. As you stretch your toes closer to the warmth, you become hyper-aware of the temperature layers inside the lodge. Near the base, where your hands and feet hover, the heat is strongest. Higher up it feels cooler. You can almost trace the air currents with your fingertips. It feels like the lodge has invisible hands, arranging warmth exactly where it is needed. You inhale deeply, letting the smell of smoke and hide fill your senses. At the edges of the lodge, you can see how the hide covering is staked tightly to the ground. You examine the seams again, noticing how they create slight ridges that guide condensation downward. Combined with the natural oils in the hides, this helps moisture roll into the snow outside, rather than dripping onto your bedding. This little detail is something many reenactors miss when building modern replicas, yet it is one of the simplest ways the structure stays dry through the night. A faint breeze curls inward near the bottom of the wall. It is not cold enough to bother you. In fact, it feeds the fire gently without making the lodge drafty. This balance between airflow and insulation is delicate. Too little oxygen and the fire smolders. Too much and smoke floods the interior. Yet here, everything feels precisely tuned. You shift slightly and feel your shoulders loosen. The lodge invites relaxation. It is not that the air is warm like a heated home. It is more that the cold loses its teeth in here. It becomes a distant presence rather than a threat. You can sense its weight, but it cannot harm you. You glance at the fire again. The flames flutter low and soft, just enough to keep the space alive. One of the mainstream facts often repeated about tipis is that they could stay surprisingly warm with minimal fuel. And as you sit here, that claim becomes real. You have barely seen anyone tend the fire, and yet the warmth remains steady as a heartbeat. You stretch out on the mat beneath you and let your weight sink into it. Your muscles unwind slowly, encouraged by the gentle rise of heat. The interior grows quieter. The fire pops softly. The hide walls exhale now and then with the breeze. Outside, you can hear winter shifting, but those sounds feel distant, softened by layers of hide and an expertly crafted shape. Here is something amusing and oddly charming. Some accounts mention that children sometimes learned early on to judge wind direction by watching how smoke drifted inside the lodge at night, not by looking outside, but by reading the interior atmosphere. The tipi itself taught them. It was a sort of built-in weather classroom. As your eyelids droop, you admire one last detail. The ceiling poles, arranged with such precision, create a spiral effect when seen from below. The spiral draws your gaze upward in slow, calming arcs. It is almost hypnotic. You imagine families lying here, gazing upward in the same way, letting stories and warmth lull them towards sleep. You close your eyes halfway, feeling the heat brush against your face, and realize that your first night inside the lodge is already reshaping your sense of winter. The tipi has taken the edge off of a world that, moments ago, felt too harsh to endure. And lying there, half dreaming, half awake, you feel a deep respect for the knowledge woven into this place. Knowledge born from generations watching how cold behaves, how fire behaves, and how humans rest best when the world feels balanced around them. You shift a little closer to the fire, letting your palms hover above its soft glow as you take in the quiet rhythm of the lodge. The warmth is steady now, almost like a companion sitting beside you, and for a moment you simply watch how the flames move. They curl upward in slow ribbons, turning the air buttery and golden. Then you start noticing something deeper, something subtle that shapes the whole night from this single glowing heart tucked at the center of the teepee. The hearth is not large. It does not roar or boast. It hums, it murmurs, it pulses. You can feel that its placement is no accident. The position is measured, intentional, refined through generations who did not scribble blueprints, yet somehow mastered the art of perfect thermal balance. One detail, widely accepted among cultural historians, is that the central fire was not just for heating, but also for regulating the entire lodge ecosystem. The flame anchored the night, gave structure to routines, and served as the literal and symbolic center of the household. You watch sparks drift upward with slow confidence, slipping into the dark tunnel of the smoke hole. The drift is mesmerizing. You almost find your breath falling into sync with it. But then, as your gaze traces the glowing embers along the edges of the pit, your mind catches on an unexpected piece of winter knowledge. Early travelers who camped with plains families occasionally wrote about tossing small aromatic plants into the coals before sleep. These were not sacred or symbolic plants, just simple things like crushed juniper or dry sage, added to freshen the air or gently discourage insects hiding in bedding. It is one of those little background notes that rarely makes it into documentaries. But once you hear it, the entire space feels even more alive, as if someone has been quietly scenting the air to soothe the night. As the fire sighs again, you begin to sense how precisely controlled it must be. Just enough heat to warm your bones, not enough to flood the lodge with smoke. The balance is delicate, the margin thin, yet the results are reliable. You glance upward once more toward the opening at the top. The smoke column rises in a soft swirl, steady enough that you could almost imagine drawing its path with your finger. Here you brush against an old disagreement among researchers of plains architecture. Some specialists maintain that winter tipis were always built with a slightly deeper fire pit, carved to create a gentler updraft. Others insist that the pit depth varied wildly, depending on soil, season, or personal preference, and that stories about standardized hearth shapes are exaggerations drawn from too few recorded examples. You can almost hear the academic conference room debate crackling in the background, the same way the fire crackles before you. Yet while their arguments continue, the only thing that matters tonight is the simple, elegant reality warming your face. You shift your weight, lowering yourself so you can feel the heat from more angles. The glow strokes your cheeks, warms the air that reaches your lungs, and softens the stiffness in your muscles. It is a quiet, almost meditative warmth. You can see how easily a person would drift off while staring at this small but purposeful flame. The fire does not dominate the room, it anchors it. Its glow touches hide walls, bedding, tools, and even the steam rising from your breath. Everything seems to participate in this slow dance of heat. Your eyes catch the faint shimmer of soot-darkened stones arranged near the fire pit. These stones serve more than one purpose. They act as barriers, they hold embers in place, and they slowly absorb heat. Hours later, after the flames have shrunk and your eyes droop, those stones will continue to release warmth in tiny waves, radiating comfort long after the last stick of wood burns down. It is the kind of small thermal trick people discover not by theory, but by watching winter closely and learning from it year after year. Another breath of warm air rises past your cheek. The lodge smells earthy, smoky, and faintly sweet where juniper might have burned earlier. The outer world feels a lifetime away. You imagine nights when families gathered right where you sit, telling soft stories, carving tools by the firelight, or simply winding down after a long day of work. You picture children falling asleep one by one, curled near their parents, lulled by that same low crackle. You tilt your head slightly and watch how air moves around the fire. The flame seems to know exactly how much oxygen it receives. There is a quiet intelligence to the rhythm. It does not sputter or gasp. It breathes, steady as your own chest. The lodge responds in kind. A light draft circles the interior, keeping the air fresh without chilling your skin. This cooperation between fire and architecture feels almost too elegant to be accidental, yet it is the product of centuries of observation rather than formal design schools. Your mind wanders briefly to the cold outside, the biting world you crossed just to reach this sacred circle of warmth. Out there, the wind can slice through even modern materials. In here, the air embraces you. It feels alive, almost protective. The contrast makes you smile without meaning to. You feel the edges of the day melt into the soft orange glow. A quiet pulse of heat reaches your feet. You stretch your toes toward it until they tingle. The light flickers across the roof poles again, drawing your gaze upward. The fire paints the interior in warm strokes, making it easy to forget the snow piling outside. You blink slowly, your breathing deepening. The fire has done exactly what it has done for countless nights among countless families. It has softened the cold, eased the mind, and invited the body toward rest. You feel it working on you already. The lodge seems to lean in, whispering that you are safe here, that warmth will hold you gently until morning. And as your eyes drift half shut, you realize that this central fire is far more than a source of heat. It is a companion, a guide, a teacher of quiet winter knowledge. It is the reason you can settle into this place at all, trusting the night to be gentle with you. You sit back from the fire, letting its glow settle into the edges of your awareness as your eyes drift toward the hide walls encircling you. At first glance, they seem simple, just layered animal skins stretched over poles. But now that your senses have adjusted to the warmth, you begin to appreciate how alive those walls feel. They rise and soften with each tiny gust, flexing outward then relaxing inward, almost like lungs. You run your fingers lightly along the nearest panel and feel its subtle grain. It is smoother than you expected, warmer too, holding onto the fire's heat, the way a thick winter coat hugs body warmth on a frigid morning. You lean closer and notice a faint pattern of stitching, so precise that you wonder how many hands must have worked on it. One documented detail from historical accounts is that buffalo hides used for winter lodges were smoked intentionally before being sewn into coverings. The smoking process preserved the material and also added a layer of weather resistance, letting the hide shrug off moisture rather than absorbing it. As you trace one seam, the faint, earthy scent still lingers, blending with the gentle perfume of wood smoke drifting upward from the hearth. The walls are not a single layer. They are several carefully arranged sheets, their edges overlapping in a pattern that channels wind upward and away from bedding areas. When winter deepens, extra hides can be added until the lodge resembles a thick cocoon. You push your hand gently against the surface and feel that layered density now, soft yet firm. It captures heat not by trapping it rigidly but by cradling it, letting the lodge settle into a warm rhythm. A soft draft slips between two seams and instantly you feel how controlled it is. It is not a chilling gust. It is a slow breath. The structure is designed to move, to flex, to allow just enough air exchange to keep everything comfortable. Modern buildings often suffocate warmth or leak it too quickly. Here the balance feels natural, almost intuitive. Your gaze drifts upward along the wall until it reaches the highest poles. Light from the fire ripples across the hide, creating amber currents that shift like reflections in shallow water. You notice something interesting. The hide near the top looks slightly thinner. That is not an accident. Some nations preferred using lighter hides toward the smoke hole so that moisture could escape more easily, and so the structure did not grow too heavy on windy nights. The lodge is a living lesson in weight distribution, breathability, and warmth management, without needing any artificial reinforcement. You tilt your head, almost listening. The walls make tiny sounds if you stay still long enough. Soft creaks of hide tightening, a whisper of wind testing the seams, the quiet pop of a stitch adjusting. It feels like the whole lodge is stretching before curling back into stillness. And in one of those nearly forgotten early observations from travelers, some families hung small bundles of dried grass or herbs on the inside walls because the shifting hides created a soft rustling sound they found comforting at night. These tiny bundles acted like nature's white noise machines, lulling everyone deeper into rest. You smile at the thought. Even here, centuries ago, people knew how to design a good sleep environment. You scoot closer to the wall and press your palm against it. Surprisingly, the hide feels warm. Not hot, not heated like modern insulation, but warm enough to notice. The heat from the fire circulates so effectively that even the outer covering absorbs and reflects a bit of it back toward the interior. You imagine lying down beside it at night, feeling that faint warmth on your back while your face basks in the gentle glow of the hearth. Your body relaxes more as you watch how the hide shifts with each subtle movement of outside air. It reminds you of sails on a boat, except here the motion is grounded, intimate, tied to the quiet business of keeping a family warm. The walls help create a vertical airflow that allows smoke to rise cleanly, avoiding the throat-stinging clouds that might overwhelm a less refined shelter. At this point, your thoughts drift to a long-standing debate among researchers of indigenous housing traditions. Some specialists claim that winter lodges used a precise number of hides arranged in a consistent pattern for optimal thermal efficiency. Others argue that the pattern varied widely from family to family, and that the idea of a single formula is a simplification drawn from limited records. The truth, as always, likely lives somewhere in between. But while scholars discuss those patterns in distant conference rooms, the hide before you simply exists, warming you, breathing with you, doing its job exactly as it has for generations. You find yourself leaning into the wall again, appreciating its surprising resilience. If you close your eyes, you can feel how it bends just slightly under your touch, then rebounds. This flexibility is a crucial feature. The tipi does not resist winter wind by brute force. It flows with it. Wind strikes the surface, curves along the slope, and drifts upward. The hides funnel the pressure away, preventing sudden drafts or rattling noises that might disturb sleeping families. The structure is calm because it is adaptable. You shift your weight and settle into a more comfortable posture, letting your back rest lightly against the hide. It molds to you in a gentle, forgiving way. The warmth from the fire flows around you, trapped and guided by the walls that act almost like a giant thermal engine. You think about how modern campers often rely on synthetic insulation and rigid structures, and yet here you feel warmer than you expected, tucked into a design born from patient experimentation with the raw materials of the land. Another gentle draft sweeps up the wall, and you catch a faint glimmer of movement outside, like snow sliding down the outer surface. The hide sheds snow naturally, preventing heavy buildup that might cool the structure or cause sagging. It is the kind of detail you would not think about unless you lived through winters like these. But here, surrounded by warmth, you begin to see how every element of the lodge fits into a larger system of survival and comfort. You reach up and touch one of the sewn seams. The stitches are tight and neat, made of sinew that shrinks in cold weather, helping the lodge seal itself even more firmly as temperatures drop. As the fire warms the interior, the hide softens just enough to maintain flexibility. This dynamic relationship between material and climate is what makes the tipi feel warm instead of merely tolerable. You breathe in slowly. Smoke rises in a thin ribbon beside you. The air is clear enough that your eyes do not sting. You feel your chest loosen as you exhale, your breath joining the invisible flow of warm air being shepherded upward by the hides. The whole lodge feels like a breathing creature sharing its warmth with you. The hide walls do not simply block the cold. They shape the night around you, softening sounds, filtering light, guiding air. And as you rest there with your back against that warm, living surface, you understand why people could sleep deeply in these lodges, even when the world outside froze solid. The tipi does not fight winter. It transforms it into something gentle, something manageable, something that lets you drift towards sleep with a quiet, grateful mind. You shift slightly on the bedding, letting the warmth of the hide wall linger against your shoulder, and then your eyes fall toward the shallow depression at your feet. At first, it might look like nothing more than a simple fire pit carved into the packed earth. But now that you have spent some time inside the lodge, you begin to notice how that small, hollow shapes almost everything about the temperature, the airflow, and even the way the fire breathes. You lean forward, elbows resting loosely on your knees, and study the shallow basin more carefully. The pit itself is not deep. It dips gently into the earth, just a few inches lower than the floor around it. The shape is smooth, almost bowl-like, with stones arranged in a thoughtful pattern along the rim. You run your fingers over one of the stones and feel its textured surface still warm from absorbing heat. A commonly referenced detail in early accounts notes that these stones were often selected for their ability to withstand repeated heating, since they expanded less and cracked less during long winter nights. As you brush the stone's edge, you feel the quiet endurance it carries, storing warmth in its core long after the flames have faded. Your gaze drifts to the way the embers settle inside the hollow. They glow like tiny suns, pulsing with orange and red light. The shape of the pit encourages them to gather in the center, concentrating their heat and creating a stable heart to feed the fire. You watch the coals shift, settling deeper into the depression as if drawn there by instinct. You can feel their warmth radiating outward, brushing over your face in gentle waves. Then another interesting detail surfaces in your mind. Some early explorers wrote about people occasionally sprinkling very fine sand into the basin to help slow oxygen flow and make the coals last longer. The sand would not smother the fire. Instead, it created a subtle heat buffer, letting the embers survive far into the night without constant tending. This sort of quiet ingenuity is everywhere in the lodge, but here, at the hearth, it feels particularly elegant. You lower your head, letting the heat reach your cheeks while your eyes follow the path of rising smoke. It flows upward in a patient line, swirling only slightly before slipping through the smoke hole above. The shallow pit helps guide this movement. It prevents the flame from climbing too high and encourages the fire to stay low and stable. The effect is subtle but powerful. The lodge feels warm without being smoky, bright without being glaring. A thought crosses your mind about a topic researchers continue to debate. Some anthropologists insist that the depth and exact shape of winter hearth pits followed a long-standing tradition with specific measurements passed down across generations. Others point out that the evidence is inconsistent and that pits varied significantly depending on soil hardness, weather, and personal preference. Each viewpoint has its champions. You imagine those experts poring over excavation reports, gesturing excitedly over tiny differences in soil layers. But here, sitting before the glowing basin, the argument feels distant. The pit works. It does what it has always done. Measurements no longer matter when the warmth seeps up into your bones. You lean closer, feeling the heat strengthen on your skin. The air around the pit is rich, warm, and lightly scented with the sweet tang of burning wood. You inhale deeply. The aroma settles into your lungs in a way that makes your whole body relax. The fire makes small sounds, tapping lightly against the stones as if telling secrets in a language the lodge already knows. The flames are low, only a few inches tall, but they flare and fold with an almost mesmerizing grace. The shallow pit contains them just enough to keep their shape gentle, their heat steady. The fire is a companion, not a threat, a soft beacon that guides your eyes and thoughts into quieter places. Your knees warm as the heat radiates outward. You stretch your fingers toward the fire and notice that even the air just above the pit feels layered. Closest to the coals, the warmth is thick and heavy. A little higher, it becomes lighter and softer. The lodge takes advantage of this natural layering, using it to distribute heat across the sleeping area. You can almost trace the currents with your fingertips. You shift again, letting your toes drift closer. The warmth feels like a slow tide rising gently around your feet. The floor beneath you stays comfortable because of the pit's careful placement. Too deep, and the lodge would feel chilly at your level. Too shallow, and smoke would linger. Here, the balance feels perfect. Your eyes wander to the ground surrounding the pit. The earth is packed tight, smoothed by countless hands. You imagine all the nights spent tending fires in lodges like this, each one reinforcing the smoothness. The floor feels familiar, lived in, shaped by human presence rather than machines. Tiny grooves along the edge of the pit catch your attention. They form subtle patterns where people have dragged coals or nudged embers, reminders of long winter routines. A particularly charming detail from the old journals describes children learning to sweep stray embers back into the pit with little sticks before crawling into their bedding. It was like a bedtime chore, gentle and rhythmic, teaching responsibility and also making sure no wandering spark could threaten the hide floor. You picture it now, small hands pushing glowing specks inward, the coals tumbling softly into the warm depression. It feels like a memory you did not know you had. You lean back, letting the warmth continue to fill the space around you. The pit holds the fire securely, keeping it from spreading too thin or too tall. It shapes the flame's mood, its intensity, even its personality. Without this shallow hollow, the fire would behave differently, rising too quickly or burning too fast. Instead, it simmers, slow and confident, perfect for long nights and deep sleep. You glance upward again. The smoke curls in a gentle thread toward the opening. It does not cling to the air or hang in clouds. It rises, clean and sure, guided by the combined work of the pit, the conical shape, and the breathing walls. Every part of the lodge works together. Nothing stands alone. The pit may be small, but it is the quiet conductor of the entire space. Your eyelids grow heavier as you watch the coals pulse. One bright ember flares, sending a tiny shower of sparks upward, each one vanishing into darkness before reaching the poles. The flare is brief, almost shy. Then the ember calms again, joining the steady glow of the others. You take a slow breath, feeling the heat wrap around your chest and shoulders. You realize that the shallow hearth is not just a place to build a fire. It is an anchor for the entire night. It holds the warmth, shapes the air, supports the rhythm of rest. It is a small miracle of practical design, discovered not through equations, but through watching the way heat moves across frozen land. You ease back onto your bedding, feeling the warmth settle around you again. The pit glows quietly, steady, and faithful. In the soft dimness of the lodge, its presence feels almost like a heartbeat guiding the night. And as your breathing slows, you begin to understand why people could sleep through bitter winters with confidence. The fire pit is not deep, but its wisdom is. You shift your weight slightly, letting the warmth from the hearth drift across your legs, when your eyes settle on something you have only half noticed until now. Behind you, running along the lower inside wall of the lodge, is an inner curtain of hide that hangs with a quiet, unassuming grace. At first glance it looks decorative, maybe just another layer of material used for privacy. But as you study it more closely, you realize that this inner lining is one of the most brilliant, subtle pieces of winter engineering tucked inside the Tipis design. You reach out and touch the edge of the liner. It feels softer than the outer hides, more pliable, as if chosen to move easily with shifts in temperature. The liner sits a short distance away from the outer wall, creating a narrow, hidden channel of air. That space is where the real magic happens. One often cited detail in historical descriptions is that this liner serves as a thermal guide, drawing cool air up from the bottom of the lodge and shepherding it toward the smoke hole, all while pushing warm air down into the living space. You feel that effect now. Air warms around your shoulders, pushing gently across your skin in waves that feel almost intentional. You lean closer, studying how the bottom of the liner is slightly raised. Cool air slips inward from beneath the outer cover, glides behind the liner like a silent guest, and then warms as it rises. You can see the faint shimmering of heat as it meets colder currents, merging into something more comfortable. This circulation is quiet, graceful, almost elegant. You smile to yourself, amazed at how this simple piece of hide manages a job that modern houses often need fans and vents to achieve. As your fingers move along the liner's stitched edge, you come across one of those little side notes tucked into early settler journals. Some families decorated the top of their liners with painted patterns or small tassels because the rising warm air made them sway softly, offering a kind of meditative motion during long winter nights. You imagine lying on your bedding watching those tassels drift gently in the warm current, like dream catchers dancing in slow motion. You sit back, letting the warmth pool more deeply around your chest and shoulders. The liner guides the heat so subtly that you almost forget it is there. It creates a second skin inside the lodge, one that hugs warmth close while letting the outer surface wrestle with wind and cold. Without this curtain, heat would scrape upward too quickly, leaving the lower half of the lodge chilly. With it, the warmth stays where sleeping bodies need it most. Your eyes drift upward as you follow the liner's path. It rises until it meets the convergence of poles near the top, stopping just shy of the smoke hole. That gap is important. It lets smoke escape smoothly while preventing cold downdrafts from cascading onto the sleepers below. This careful placement is something anthropologists like to point out when discussing indigenous architectural knowledge, although they still disagree on whether some nations preferred their liners to be slightly angled or perfectly vertical. Standing here, you suspect that both approaches likely worked, depending on local winds, personal experience, or even the thickness of the hides available. You adjust your seat again, allowing your back to rest gently against the liner. To your surprise, it feels warm. Not just warm from the fire, but warm in a full, surrounding way. The air trapped behind it holds heat and releases it slowly, like a giant, living radiator running the perimeter of the lodge. You take a long, quiet breath and feel your muscles loosen again. The liner rustles softly when the wind nudges the outer wall. The sound is delicate, almost like a whisper. That movement, though gentle, plays an important role. As the outer wall shifts with gusts outside, the gap between outer hide and liner widens and narrows in a rhythmic cycle. That motion helps pump warmed air downward and draw cool air upward behind the curtain. The lodge becomes a living system, adjusting to wind without letting it in. You marvel at the effortless cooperation of structure and climate. You lean closer, noticing how the liner attaches to the poles. The ties are small, neat loops of hide or sinew. You can see how they allow the curtain to move freely without sagging. Some historical notes mention the use of willow rods at the top edge to keep the liner taut and improve airflow, though not every lodge used them. The flexibility of this design is part of its brilliance. Families could add or remove pieces depending on the season, turning the lodge into a winter fortress or a breezy summer retreat with a few adjustments. You slide your palm along the hide again. Its surface is warm and faintly oily from natural preservation methods. That oiliness helps keep the liner supple, so it does not crack during bitter cold. The smoothness under your hand feels soothing, almost like touching the flank of a gentle animal resting beside you. You imagine lying here on a stormy night, listening to wind lash against the outer wall while the inner liner barely stirs, keeping warmth settled right where you are. It is such a quiet, thoughtful piece of engineering. If you were not paying attention, you might miss it entirely. Yet, it is one of the main reasons a tipi remains warm, even when temperatures plummet far below freezing. Your eyes soften as you watch the fire through the thin curtain of warm air floating near the ground. The flames flicker with a kind of steady confidence, knowing the liner is helping them do their work. You can practically feel the air flowing behind it as it rises, passes upward, and exits through the smoke hole in a gentle spiral. The lodge breathes. You breathe with it. You tilt your head back and listen. The crackle of the fire, the quiet shifting of hide, the sigh of warm currents brushing over you. Everything feels deliberate, peaceful, and deeply human. You sense how this liner made winter nights not only survivable but comfortable, even nurturing. With the liner at your back and the fire before you, the cold outside seems unimportant now. You barely remember the stinging air you crossed earlier. All you feel is the quiet, circulating warmth of this ancient invention, cradling the space around you and guiding the night towards sleep. You settle deeper into your place beside the fire, feeling the currents of warm air brush over your arms and your attention drifts toward the bedding piled near the far wall. At first it looks like an inviting nest of furs, soft and plentiful, a temptation you could easily curl into right now. But when you move closer and run your hand along the thick surface, you discover that these buffalo robes are not just blankets. They are masterpieces of winter survival, each one carrying a texture, a weight, and a purpose, shaped by generations who knew cold, not as an inconvenience, but as a constant companion. Your fingers sink into the fur. It is incredibly dense, far denser than the coats of most animals you may have handled. One commonly accepted fact in historical descriptions is that winter buffalo hides were prized above almost anything else on the plains. The fur trapped warm air in layers, functioning like a naturally engineered insulation system. You feel that now, as your hand disappears into softness so deep it feels bottomless. The warmth within the fibers lingers even after you pull your hand away, as though the hide refuses to release heat too quickly. You pick up one of the robes and drape it across your lap. Its weight surprises you. Not heavy in a burdensome way, but substantial, grounding. The inside surface, the one against your skin, is smoother than the furred exterior. It has been scraped, stretched, and smoked until it feels supple and warm. If you close your eyes, you might mistake it for a heated towel fresh from a dryer. A detail tucked into various early accounts notes that people often arranged their robes fur side inward for sleeping, letting the dense fibers cradle body heat directly. When several robes were layered together, they created a kind of natural thermal vault, trapping warmth so effectively that even sub-zero temperatures could not invade the cocoon they formed. You can almost imagine waking in the night, surrounded by that gentle heat, the fire a soft glow across the room, and the cold outside reduced to a distant memory. As you stroke the hide again, another small curiosity rises to mind. Some winter camps took special care to keep a few robes deliberately thicker than others, set aside for the coldest nights or for elders who needed extra protection. These robes might have been made from the hairier parts of the buffalo, the areas where the animal itself once relied most on warmth. Their creation required patient scraping and careful trimming. Even now, your fingertips detect variations within the fur, subtle shifts in texture where thicker tufts catch the light. You shift your position, allowing the robe to settle more fully over your legs. The warmth is immediate. It gathers around your knees, seeps into your thighs, then wraps around your hips like a living embrace. The air in the lodge feels mild already, but wrapped in this robe, you sense how someone could drift into sleep without feeling a single thread of cold press through. Your attention lifts for a moment as you consider a long-standing discussion among ethnographers. Some argue that families arranged robes in a particular pattern each night, placing certain hides at the bottom for insulation and others on top for heat retention. Others insist there was no fixed system, that people simply layered whatever hides were available in a way that felt comfortable. You can see both viewpoints. The bedding before you is thick, inviting, thoughtfully layered, but flexible enough that anyone could adjust it to personal preference. You kneel down and press your palm into the bedding beneath the top robe. There are several layers hiding there, each with its own role. The lowest layer provides dryness and separation from the cold earth. The middle layer traps warmth and prevents heat from escaping downward. The top layer, plush and soft, holds your body in a warm cradle. You feel how the pressure of your hand creates a little pocket of heat almost instantly. The robe responds to your body like a living creature. Another robe lies nearby, folded neatly. You pick it up and notice faint marks along the edge, tiny holes made by an awl. These holes once held laces or ties, meaning the robe could be fastened around shoulders or wrapped snugly around legs during especially severe weather. A traveler from the 19th century once wrote with surprise that a single thick buffalo robe could keep someone warm even when the air was cold enough to freeze water in a cup beside them. That observation glows quietly in your memory as you hold the robe now. You can believe it. You sit back, wrapped in the robe, letting the fire's glow sift across the fur. The smell of wood smoke clings to the fibers, earthy and comforting. You imagine a full winter night, the wind howling outside, the snow drifting into soft hills around the lodge, and yet inside, wrapped in these robes, you would sleep as though held in a warm cave of light and breath. Your gaze returns to the pile of bedding. Some robes are longer, some are broader, some look older, softened by years of use until the fur has worn down in patches. Each one holds a story. Perhaps someone once carried a robe across miles of open prairie. Perhaps a young child slept in it for seasons, curling into the softness while listening to stories whispered by firelight. You run your fingers through the fur again. The texture shifts from silky to coarse, depending on where you touch. This natural variation helps trap air more effectively, creating tiny pockets that hold heat. It is a kind of organic engineering no modern machine could duplicate perfectly. You press your palm flat and feel the warmth rise to meet it, slow and sure. The robe on your lap has grown even warmer now, as though responding to your body. The lodge feels quieter, softer, more intimate with each passing breath. The fire hums in a gentle rhythm. The liner rustles faintly behind you. And the buffalo robes, those thick, miraculous creations of winter, complete the circle of comfort. Outside, the cold keeps deepening, settling over the prairie like a crystal blanket. But inside, bundled in these robes, you feel untouched by it. The air against your skin is warm, the ground beneath you cushioned, the glow from the fire steady and reassuring. With heat pooling in the layers of fur, you understand how people slept peacefully even when the world outside froze solid. Wrapped in this ancient warmth, you draw in a slow, steady breath. Your eyelids flutter. The robe feels heavier now, soothingly so, as though encouraging you to surrender to rest. The buffalo provided more than food or tools. It provided the very warmth that made winter nights survivable, even gentle. You sink deeper into that warmth. The lodge breathes softly. The fire flickers, and the robe, thick and generous, holds the night at bay. You ease the buffalo robe aside, letting its lingering warmth fall gently from your lap, and shift your attention toward the bedding arrangements spread across the lodge floor. At first glance, it looks like a thick, comforting pile of hides and blankets, inviting you to collapse into it immediately. But as you move closer and let your fingertips explore the surface, you begin to understand how carefully these sleeping pallets were constructed. They are not random layers tossed together at the end of a long day. They are deliberate, thoughtful assemblies designed to lift every sleeper above the ice-hardened earth and hold warmth in a way that feels quietly miraculous in such brutal cold. You kneel and press your palm against the top layer. It gives under your hand, soft and flexible, yet firmly supported by the layers beneath it. One well-documented note in historical writings explains that families typically slept on carefully arranged stacks of softened hides, each layer chosen for its specific contribution to warmth. Some hides provided cushioning, others trapped heat, and still others kept moisture from creeping upward from the frozen ground. You can feel these differences now, even without seeing the individual pieces. Your hand sinks just enough to reveal that each layer serves a distinct purpose. You lift a corner of the bedding and peek beneath it. The lowest layer rests directly on the smoothed earth, sometimes over a woven mat or rush matting depending on season and region. A surprisingly clever observation noted by early travelers is that dried grass mats, when tightly woven, acted like a natural insulating board, keeping cold from rising, while still allowing the bedding above to breathe. You run your fingers across one of these mats and feel how springy and dry the texture is. It surprises you how warm it remains, even in the chill of night. Above that first layer lies another hide, this one thicker and slightly rougher. You can tell it is meant to create distance from the cold ground. That separation, even just an inch or two, can mean the difference between a comfortable night and waking stiff from the icy chill below. You test the warmth rising through the layers with the back of your hand, feeling how the cold from the ground stops short, blocked by careful construction rather than brute force. As you settle back, you uncover a detail that sparks your curiosity. Some accounts mention that people occasionally powdered dried earth or ground willow bark onto certain hides to keep them from slipping during the night. The powder increased friction just enough to hold layers steady. You imagine someone long ago adding a pinch of that earthy dust while preparing bedding for winter. It is one of those small, inventive practices that rarely gets mentioned yet reveals so much about daily ingenuity. You lift one of the mid-layers, a hide softened to near velvet. Its touch feels soothing against your palm. This is where much of the warmth pools, held between fibers like quiet embers waiting to be awakened by body heat. You understand immediately how a person could fall asleep here, even when frost thickens outside. You lay the hide back down gently and let your fingertips trace the patterns of its grain. Your eyes drift toward the topmost layer. These are the softest hides, chosen for comfort as much as insulation. They cradle the body, letting weight settle slowly, reducing pressure on joints stiff from long days in winter air. You press your palm deeper into the top layer and feel how it conforms, almost hugging your hand. That tender give is one of the reasons sleepers did not wake sore, despite cold and hard ground beneath. Another quiet dispute often noted among cultural researchers concerns the exact order of layering. Some argue that fur should always face inward on the topmost hides, while others assert that families reversed the direction depending on how much body heat they needed to retain. You look at the bedding, noticing that some hides indeed have fur facing up, while others are smooth side up. It seems flexible, adaptable, shaped by preference and need rather than strict rules. You shift onto the pallet and feel its welcome embrace. The layers respond instantly to your weight. You are lifted just enough that the cold earth might as well be miles below. Warmth rises from the bedding even before your body has a chance to heat it. That warmth is faint at first but grows steadily, wrapping your legs and back in a quiet envelope of comfort. Your eyes soften as you study the space where a child might curl up between two adults. There is a natural hollow formed by overlapping hides, a small nook that would warm quickly. You imagine tiny bodies sinking into the softness, drifting to sleep while listening to the muffled wind outside. The bedding feels protective, nurturing. Even now, sitting here as a visitor, you feel its calming pull. You lie back slowly, letting your spine settle along the pallet. Instantly, the warmth beneath you begins to deepen. Your weight slightly compresses the layers, activating the insulating effect that keeps heat near your skin. The feeling is unexpectedly luxurious. You understand now why people slept soundly, even in winter storms. Their bedding was not merely functional, it was thoughtfully crafted comfort. Your fingertips brush along the edge of the pallet where several hides overlap with deliberate precision. The seams do not line up. They are staggered intentionally to avoid cold cracks where heat might escape. It is a small architectural detail, but one that says everything about how people learned to survive winter with wisdom, passed quietly from one generation to the next. The fire glows nearby, washing the bedding in soft light. Shadows ripple gently across the furs and hides, creating a landscape of warm peaks and valleys. You listen to the shifting sounds around you, the low crackle of embers, the faint stir of the inner liner, and the hushed movement of warm air gliding along the floor. Everything adds to the sleep readiness of the space. You feel safe here, protected by layers designed to soften the cold's sharp edges. Another interesting note pulls into your thoughts. Some journals mention that on especially frigid nights, a hot stone from the hearth might be wrapped in cloth or hide and placed beneath the bedding for extra warmth. The stone, slowly releasing stored heat, acted almost like a primitive but effective warming pad. You imagine slipping into the bedding on such a night, feeling that pocket of heat bloom beneath you, the firelight dancing above as your eyelids grow heavy. Your hand drifts across the top hide once more, appreciating its softness. Each fiber seems to sigh beneath your touch. The bedding does not feel like equipment. It feels like companionship, like part of the home itself. It invites you to rest, to breathe more slowly, to let the night wrap around you without fear. You ease yourself into a reclining position, the layers adjusting as if to cradle you more gently. The warmth thickens around your back and shoulders. You draw in a slow breath and exhale softly, feeling your body sink deeper into the embrace of hides and mats. Outside, winter sharpens its icy teeth, but inside you feel untouchable, wrapped in knowledge, craft, and quiet warmth. You close your eyes for a moment, imagining the countless nights people must have drifted off in this same comfort, lulled by firelight and the soft rustling of hides. The bedding beneath you is a testament to their ingenuity, a gentle reminder that even in the harshest conditions, they created a space where sleep could be warm, deep, and safe. You sit up slowly, warmth still clinging to your body from the bedding, and let your gaze drift toward the Tipis entrance. The flap hangs still for the moment, untouched by any gust. But you remember the icy emptiness outside, the endless sweep of snow, the wind that never seems to tire. So how did entire camps, dozens of lodges clustered together, keep winter from tearing straight through their shelters at night? As you rise and stretch your legs, you begin to picture the wider camp beyond this single warm sanctuary, and the thought of how the people arranged their homes becomes its own kind of quiet revelation. You step toward the entrance and lift the flap just enough to peer outside. The cold reaches for your face immediately, sharp and insistent, but your eyes adjust to the dim starlight, and soon you see it. The pattern, the logic, Tipis arranged not randomly but with a deliberate rhythm, forming subtle barriers against the wind. One feature consistently described in winter accounts is that the entire camp layout acted as a shield, with lodges positioned to share their windbreaks and soften the sting of winter gusts. You can almost feel the idea unfolding across the snowy clearing like an invisible map of warmth. You duck fully outside for a moment, pulling your robe tighter around your shoulders. The cold bites, but you study the surrounding camp more carefully. The first thing you notice is orientation. Many tipis open away from the direction of the prevailing winter wind. Entrances face more sheltered angles, sometimes toward a stand of trees, sometimes toward a slight hill, sometimes toward the morning sun. The effect is immediate. Wind flows around the camp rather than into it. You turn slowly in a full circle, tracing the line of lodges grouped in gentle arcs. Some families positioned their tipis closer together in winter, creating narrow corridors where wind softened as it passed. Those corridors allowed people to walk from one lodge to another without facing the full punishment of the gale. You imagine stepping through those protected pathways during a storm, your body shielded by the curve of a neighbor's lodge. You draw your robe tighter again, the fur brushing your jaw, and consider the land itself. Camps often settled near groves, low ridges, or riverbanks, where the landscape naturally broke the wind. One well-supported detail among historical studies notes that winter camps used the land's contours with remarkable subtlety. Even a shallow dip in the ground, barely noticeable in summer, could become the perfect wind buffer when icy gusts whipped across the plains. You look around and notice the gentle rise behind your own teepee. You had not paid attention to it earlier, but now you see how it blocks the worst of the wind. Another thought drifts to you, one that shows just how observant people had to be. Some winter camps place the oldest and most wind-resistant teepees at the perimeter, creating a protective ring. Inside that ring, smaller lodges huddled like chicks beneath a wing. A traveler once described watching snow swirl harmlessly around the outer lodges, while the inner circle remained calm and still. You imagine the families gathered inside those inner lodges, warm and relaxed, unaware of how much the layout was guarding them. You step a little farther from your lodge, testing how the wind shifts between structures. The moment you walk past a cluster of tipis, you feel the wind weaken around your legs. It does not disappear. It softens, as though the camp itself is dispersing its force. The lodges redirect air in small eddies, making winter feel less like an adversary and more like a tired traveler passing through. A question pulls at your curiosity, one often raised among anthropologists. Was this layout carefully planned each time, or simply the natural result of experience passed between generations? Some scholars argue that winter camp patterns were deeply intentional, even ceremonial. Others insist that they formed organically, based on practical wisdom rather than strict rules. Whatever the case, walking among these lodges now, you can feel how effective the layout is. Even the spaces between tipis seem to exhale warmth, carrying the faint scent of smoke and hides. You walk around one lodge and watch snow drifting in soft waves across the ground. The pattern of movement shifts as it approaches different tipis. Some lodges cause the snow to fall straight down, others make it dance sideways. Everything depends on how the wind curls around the hides and poles. You realize that the entire camp is shaped to make winter behave predictably, to take the edge off danger and turn it into something manageable. A curious little detail surfaces from old winter accounts. Some families placed brush or low snow walls near the base of their lodges, not for structure, but to redirect gusts slightly upward. Those small barriers helped push wind over the shelters, reducing drafts at ground level. You kneel to touch a drift piled beside your lodge and wonder if someone shaped it intentionally earlier in the day. The snow feels firm, packed tight enough to influence airflow without collapsing. You rise again and take a slow, deep breath. The cold burns your lungs for a moment, but then calms as you settle into the stillness. Above you, stars cluster in brilliant knots. The night feels impossibly large, the kind of vastness that can overwhelm anyone unprepared for it. But the camp gives the landscape shape and warmth. It creates a human-sized world inside an overwhelming wilderness. Your footsteps crunch softly as you walk a wider circle around your lodge. You imagine the sounds that would fill this place on a long winter night. The muffled laughter from one lodge, the soft chant of a story whispered in another, the rhythmic scraping of someone adjusting a hide, all of it drifting through the air, softened by warm corridors and wind-protected spaces. You pause near the middle of the camp and glance back. Your lodge glows faintly, light leaking from the smoke hole like warm breath rising to the stars. Other lodges glow too, each a tiny island of warmth in the frozen plain. The layout makes the entire camp feel like a constellation of fires, each one connected by paths of softened wind and shared protection. As you stand there, robe wrapped around your shoulders, heat still stored in your clothing, you sense how deeply the people understood the cold. They did not simply endure winter, they tamed it with arrangement, position, intuition, and community. Another soft gust nudges your cheek, but the bite is weaker here, gentler. You step back toward your lodge, entering the area where multiple tipis shield one another. The air grows noticeably calmer. You feel the difference immediately, like stepping into a shallow basin of warmth. It is not the heat of fire, but the warmth of absence, the comfort of less wind, less pressure, less sting. This shared warmth might be invisible, but it is powerful. You lift the entrance flap and slip inside once more. The fire greets you with a soft flare, the hide walls whisper, and the bedding waits like a warm nest. You give the cold outside one last glance before letting the flap fall closed. The wind can rage, wander, shift, and howl, but in here, protected not just by one lodge, but by an entire community of lodges, you are safe. The warmth begins to gather around you again as you step deeper into the space. You feel it settle into your skin, into your breath, into your shoulders. Outside, the camp continues its quiet work, redirecting the wind, breaking its force, ensuring that every sleeper rests in comfort rather than fear. You lower yourself onto the bedding, gratitude settling like a blanket over your thoughts. The camp outside shapes the night, so the lodge inside can hold you gently. This cooperation, silent and ancient, is one of the reasons people slept deeply, even when winter tried its hardest to steal their warmth. You settle back onto the bedding, letting the warmth of the lodge seep into your bones, when a quiet thought draws your eyes once more toward the base of the teepee. Snow. The same icy blanket that clawed at your face outside now lies stacked neatly along the lower edge of the lodge, pressed tight against the outer hide like a silent guardian. You lean forward and touch the edge of the wall where it meets the ground, and the presence of snow suddenly feels less like an enemy and more like an ingenious collaborator in the architecture of winter survival. You shift onto your knees and lift the entrance flap just a little, allowing a sliver of cold air to brush your cheeks. Beyond the flap, snow mounds in soft drifts. The wind skims along its surface, sculpting faint ridges. But when you let the flap fall again and return to the interior, you notice how the lodge feels steadier, quieter, protected by the packed snow pressed into place. One frequently mentioned observation in winter accounts is that snow, when compacted properly, forms an effective insulating seal at the lodge's base. It fills gaps that wind might otherwise slip through and reinforces the lodge without adding weight that would strain the poles. You sit near the edge of the inner liner, allowing yourself to observe how the cold tries to invade. Each time a gust hits the lodge, the outer wall sways gently, but the air inside remains warm and calm. The snow ring acts like an anchor, gripping the base firmly and shielding the lower portion of the cover from gusts that might lift or rattle it. You run your hand along the interior hide and feel no tremor of incoming wind. The snow is doing its job quietly, without ceremony. There is something delightfully unexpected you recall from old winter journals. Some families use chunks of snow not just to seal the base, but also to patch thin areas in the hide or adjust airflow. The snow behaved almost like adjustable insulation, pressed into place and refrozen quickly in the bitter air. It would stay put until the fire's heat slowly encouraged melting near the edges, softening the seal just enough to maintain breathability. You smile at the thought. Snow, so often feared, becomes a helpful tool in the hands of people who understand it. You lean sideways slightly, pressing your palm near the floor. The air at ground level feels surprisingly warm compared to the outside world. You would expect icy drafts sneaking in along the bottom edge, but instead you find a consistent pocket of heat all around the interior. That is partly the work of the liner, partly the work of the fire's quiet circulation, and partly the work of that ring of tightly banked snow. Together they create a structured warmth that feels more like a subtle engine than a mere accident. You adjust your robe and consider how the snow interacts with the lodge through an entire night. As the fire burns, a bit of warmth filters toward the base, enough to dampen the sharpest cold, but not enough to melt the snow wall significantly. Above that, the liner captures rising heat and pushes it downward, distributing it evenly. The snow provides a final sealing measure, preventing the warm air from leaking outward too quickly. It is a delicate arrangement, yet it functions smoothly, predictably. The role of snow in camp construction leads your thoughts to a common disagreement among historians of indigenous winter architecture. Some researchers argue that nearly every winter camp made deliberate use of snowbanks as structural insulation, while others claim this practice varied significantly by region, snowfall levels, and family preference. Reading the conflicting descriptions can be like listening to two experts describe different worlds. Yet tonight, inside this warm and breathing lodge, you feel how natural the practice is. If snow is abundant and cold is relentless, why not use the land's own material to create a warm border around the home? You lean closer to the wall, listening. The wind outside mutters against the hides, but that sound is muffled by the snow. Without that tight seal, gusts would nibble at the base and slip beneath the cover, sending cold fingers across the floor. You imagine how quickly a night could turn uncomfortable without that snowy reinforcement. With it, the lodge feels sturdy, like a creature burrowing into winter rather than resisting it. You sit back on your heels and imagine the process of building such a winter-ready lodge. First, the poles raised, then the hides draped carefully, then the liner hung and smoothed, then the bedding arranged, and finally, snow packed tight around the edges, pressed by gloved hands, stomped gently with moccasins, shaped into a ring that both secures the bottom edge and strengthens the lodge against swirling air. It is an act of patience and cooperation, the kind of chore that probably brought quiet chatter, laughter, and shared effort long before the first fire ever sparked inside. You picture children watching adults press snow along the perimeter, copying the motions with their small hands. Their laughter probably echoed against the whiteness, drifting away into the cold while warm anticipation built inside the camp. Perhaps they even played games around the activity, racing each other to collect snow or carving little patterns into the mounds before the adults smoothed them out again. You brush your palm along the interior base and feel how stable the floor is. It does not quiver under the push of the wind. The snow foundation anchors everything. You take a long breath and notice how consistent the room's temperature feels. Snow, the ultimate symbol of cold, secretly works to preserve the warmth. The fire crackles behind you. Its glow flickers across the hides, dancing against the edges of the liner. The air feels soft, steady. No sharp drafts, no sudden chills. You shift your body so your side rests against the bedding and close your eyes for a moment, letting yourself imagine the roar of a proper blizzard outside. Even in that scenario, with winds screaming and snow piling high, the lodge's interior would remain a haven because that snow ring would grow thicker with every drift, compacting further, making your world even more insulated. Another rare detail noted in some accounts comes to mind. On especially frigid nights, when blowing snow formed high natural ridges around the lodges, some families described feeling even warmer, as if the lodge was sinking into a protective shell sculpted by winter itself. You imagine waking during such a storm, lifting the entrance flap to find that snow has risen halfway up the lodge. Instead of fear, warmth greets you. You open your eyes again and settle back onto the bedding. The idea of snow as an ally reshapes your understanding of winter. Before this night, it may have seemed like winter's blade. Now, sitting inside a lodge insulated by its presence, it feels almost like winter's quilt. The hide walls swell gently with the wind and fall still again. The liner moves with a soft whisper. The snow stays unmoving, diligent, pressing warmth inward while keeping the world outside at bay. You stretch your legs toward the fire, letting heat spill over them like warm water. The snow ring holds the warmth inside, shaping a small climate of comfort around you. And as you watch the shadows ripple across the walls, you begin to feel sleep tug at your eyelids again. Here, in a lodge surrounded by snow that protects rather than threatens, winter becomes something you can coexist with, something you can rest in, something that lets you drift into sleep feeling secure, cocooned by earth, hide, fire, and a ring of cold quietly transformed into warmth. You lean back onto the bedding, letting the warmth settle around your shoulders when your attention shifts to your own clothing. Even though the lodge cradles heat with skillful ease, you still feel the layers wrapped around your body, the soft brushing of hide and fabric warming gradually in the firelight. It reminds you of something important. Warmth in a winter tipi does not depend solely on fire, snow seals, hide walls, or liners. It also comes from the wisdom woven into what people wore when they slept. Clothing, chosen carefully and layered with intention, became its own quiet form of insulation. You tug lightly at your sleeve and feel the soft give of the material. The fibers warm quickly, holding heat close to your skin. A widely recognized detail in winter descriptions is that people often slept fully clothed, or nearly so, in order to conserve heat during the coldest spells. But fully clothed in this context does not mean bulky or suffocating layers. It means cleverly chosen garments, each serving a distinct role in a subtle system of thermal comfort. You smooth your hand over the inside of your shirt and feel the gentle texture. It is not rough or stiff. It is soft enough that your skin relaxes into it. The innermost layer was often something that breathed well, like finely tanned deer hide or soft wool, acquired through trade in later generations. This inner layer helped wick moisture away so the cold could not cling to the skin. You can feel now how the garment keeps your warmth sealed without feeling heavy. On top of that inner layer, a second one rests, made from thicker hide or fur. You run your fingertips across your shoulder, where fur lies close to your collarbone. It traps air in its fibers, creating a buffer that your body warms quickly. This layer acts like a personal heater that moves with you wherever you sit, stretch, or shift in the night. There is an interesting aside gathered from some early travel journals. People sometimes preferred to sleep in one particular garment for many nights in a row, not out of scarcity or habit alone, but because once a piece of clothing accumulated enough body heat, it retained that warmth more efficiently each night. As long as moisture was managed well, this lived-in layer became a familiar cocoon. You imagine slipping into such a garment at the end of the day, already warm before your body even settles. You pull your robe closer around your chest, feeling the soft weight settle with gentle authority. Outer sleeping layers were often designed not just for warmth, but for flexibility. Robes could be folded, wrapped, or gathered depending on how the night changed. If the fire brightened and warmed the lodge, the robe could be loosened a little. If the wind outside shifted and carried a colder breath, you could draw it tighter around your neck. Clothing was not static, it responded to the environment. You stretch your legs and notice how your trousers drape comfortably, not restricting movement. Many winter sleep garments were intentionally loose to trap warm air between flesh and fabric. Tight clothing would have squeezed out that insulating layer. You feel grateful for the ease with which you can shift and settle, your warmth never escaping too quickly. A detail often reflected in museum examples and early accounts notes that people sometimes lined the interior of their winter leggings with rabbit fur, chosen for its extraordinary warmth despite being so lightweight. If you run your hand down your leg now, you can imagine the plush lining hugging your calves and thighs, keeping your legs warm even before the bedding gathers around you. Rabbit fur is so soft it barely weighs anything, yet so effective that its warmth has been prized across many different cultures. You adjust your collar slightly, letting a gentle pocket of heat touch your neck. That area, thin-skinned and sensitive, benefits from even the smallest buffer. Some people wore soft scarves or narrow strips of hide loosely wrapped around their throats at night to shield them from cool drafts. You can feel how much calmer your body becomes when your neck stays warm. The whole chest relaxes, breathing deepens, the urge to curl inward fades. Your thoughts drift toward a recurring debate among researchers studying winter attire. Some emphasize that sleepwear followed consistent patterns rooted in tradition. Others argue that clothing choices were highly personal, varying by weather, material availability, or simply comfort preference. Here inside the lodge, wrapped in layers that soothe rather than constrict, you suspect the reality lay somewhere in the middle, a foundation of shared knowledge shaped gently by personal habit. You pull your robe around your shoulders again and feel how the warmth gathers, then spreads, like ripples across a still pond. The fire's glow reaches your knees, while your layered clothing holds onto the warmth that touches it. Each piece feels like part of a larger system. The hide walls, the liner, the bedding, the fire, the snow seal, and now the garments pressed softly against your skin. One charming little note you recall from oral histories is that children sometimes wore tiny fur caps when they slept, even inside the warmest lodges. The caps kept heat from escaping through the top of the head, and they also kept little ears warm when kids kicked off their robes in the middle of the night. You imagine waking in the dim firelight to see a child bundled beneath a fur cap, cheeks rosy, hair tangled, sleeping deeply while winter prowls outside. You lie back slightly, resting your weight on your hands, and the warmth in your clothing continues to rise. You feel it in the crooks of your elbows, along your ribs, down the backs of your legs. Even the subtle movement of your breath warms the space beneath your garments, a rhythm your clothing captures and returns to you. It is easy to see how a person could sleep comfortably without needing to huddle right next to the fire. You tug lightly at the edge of your sleeve again. The fabric radiates warmth, not hot but soothing, like the memory of sunlight stored in threads. The air in the lodge feels balanced, not too warm, not too cool. Your clothing converts that stability into comfort, smoothing the edges of any lingered chill. For a moment, you imagine the morning after a long winter night, people stretching quietly, pulling on outer layers still warm from sleep, stepping into the cold outside with heat sealed close to their bodies. The clothing becomes a bridge between the cozy night and the harsh world waiting outside. A quiet gust presses faintly against the lodge, but the interior stays calm. Your clothing does not lose warmth, it simply adapts, holding heat more tightly as the wind murmurs outside. You exhale, and the warmth gathers beneath your furs anew. You shift slowly onto your side, letting your entire body experience the comfort your layers create. The bedding beneath you supports the warmth, your clothing retains it, and the air around you circulates just enough to keep everything fresh. It is a system of many small decisions, each one rooted in long practice, each one making winter something you can live in rather than struggle against. As your eyelids begin to soften, you feel gratitude for the wisdom stitched into every garment wrapped around you. Clothing is not merely something worn here, it is a partner in the night, as vital as fire, hide, snow, or shelter. It holds you in warmth the way a gentle hand cups a flame, protecting the flicker of your heat until morning. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the warmth of your layered clothing settle more evenly across your shoulders when your eyes rise toward the top of the lodge. The smoke hole sits there like a dark pupil gazing into the night sky, and just beneath it, two long poles rest, ready to adjust the flaps outside. You watch the faint movement of smoke drifting upward in a loose spiral, and gradually you realize that managing these flaps is more than a simple chore, it is an art. A quiet, practiced dance between fire, air, and winter itself. You lift your chin a little to follow the smoke's path. The thin ribbon rises in a steady line, then arcs ever so slightly depending on how the breeze outside touches the flaps. One well-known detail in descriptions of plains lodges is that the smoke flaps acted like adjustable valves, helping guide heat and smoke with surprising precision. By shifting the poles a little, someone inside could redirect drafts, encourage ventilation, or shield the interior from sudden gusts. You rise slowly to your knees, moving closer to the center, so you can feel the slight differences in airflow beneath the vent. As you tilt your head back, the warm air brushes your cheeks before climbing higher. It feels soft, stable, controlled. Only when you concentrate do you sense the subtle push and pull shaped by the flaps above. You picture someone outside, perhaps moments before you entered the lodge, standing in the cold, with their hands wrapped around the long adjustment poles. A few gentle movements, a nudge here, a tiny shift there, and suddenly the interior changes tone. Smoke that once hovered low rises easily. Cold air that once tried to slide down the opening gets rerouted around the lodge. The flaps are the conductor's hands of the whole ventilation system. You rub your palms together lightly, warming them as your thoughts drift to a small detail tucked into some early winter accounts. People sometimes tied the flaps at specific angles, so they would catch the wind in a predictable way, turning unpredictable gusts into stable airflow. When wind struck from a harsh direction, adjusting the flaps could turn that force into a steady upward draft that helped the fire burn cleaner. You can almost imagine someone slipping outside, breath fogging in the air, checking the angle of the poles with practiced ease. Your eyes travel back upward. The smoke hole looks calm. No heavy clouds linger. No choking fumes drift sideways. It feels like the lodge is breathing in a slow, steady rhythm. You lean a little closer to the fire and notice something interesting. When you shift to one side, the smoke responds in subtle ways. It sways slightly toward the center again, encouraged by the airflow shaped by the flaps. The system feels intuitive once you spend time inside it. Another memory flickers into your mind, one that researchers often discuss. Some experts say that the placement and angle of the flaps varied depending on the season, the tribe, or the family tradition. Others argue that the flaps followed a more standard approach, designed for year-round flexibility. You can sense both possibilities. The flaps are simple in appearance, yet capable of so many fine adjustments that it seems natural for people to customize their technique according to landscape and weather. You sit down once more, folding your legs beneath you, and feel the warmth relax around your knees. A faint draft lifts part of your hair for a heartbeat, but it disappears before you can fully register it. The flaps prevented that draft from rushing in with force. They shape the air, rather than blocking it entirely. Without them, the lodge would fill with smoke or cold pockets of air. With them, the interior remains balanced. You lean back slightly and let your gaze wander to the sides of the lodge. Occasionally, the hide walls tremble when wind touches them outside, but the air inside stays remarkably even. The flaps above allow just enough escape for smoke, yet hold enough warmth that your skin never chills. The fire burns with steady confidence because its breath is carefully managed. You stretch a hand toward the flames and watch how their tips curl upward, encouraged by the controlled draft. A small, almost whimsical detail surfaces in your thoughts. Some families taught children how to read weather by watching the smoke hole at night. When the smoke moved straight up, calm weather lingered. When it twisted sharply or leaned sideways, shifting winds warned of changing conditions. The flaps played a part in this little atmospheric language. Their position shaped how smoke revealed the outside world's moods. You rest your elbows on your knees and inhale slowly. The air feels clean despite the fire burning so close. That clarity comes from the flaps. They turn the lodge into a self-ventilating chamber where smoke rises and disappears before it can sting your eyes. You tilt your head to watch again as another thin wave ascends and vanishes into the night. You imagine how the flaps respond during a storm. Wind might howl, snow might whip around the lodge, but inside, the flaps keep the ventilation predictable. The lodge would remain warm and breathable, the fire safe from being smothered or whipped into chaos. The flaps, simple pieces of hide and two long poles, hold winter at a respectful distance. You shift your weight again, sliding one hand across the bedding. Warmth gathers easily around your palm. The flaps above continue their quiet work, unnoticed unless you pay close attention. They are a reminder that comfort in the lodge does not come from any single source. It comes from many small choices working in harmony. You raise your gaze one last time toward the dark opening at the top. The flaps frame a sliver of sky where stars glimmer faintly. The air that leaves the lodge slips into that darkness, carrying the soft scent of wood smoke with it. You feel the gentle exhale of the structure around you, steady and calm. Lowering your head again, you ease back onto the bedding, stretching your legs toward the fire. A wave of warmth spreads across your calves. Your clothing retains the heat, the bedding cushions it, and above you, the smoke flaps guide the breath of the lodge, ensuring that everything inside remains peaceful. As your eyelids grow heavy, you appreciate how such a small feature can shape an entire night. The flaps are quiet guardians, adjusting to the wind, calming the air, and making sure every dream inside the lodge unfolds in comfort rather than smoke or cold. You settle deeper onto the bedding, feeling the warmth seep upward through the hides, when your attention drifts once more to the quiet motion of the air around you. It is subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like the brush of a soft hand passing over your cheek. But as you slow your breathing and allow yourself to attune to the small shifts in the space, you begin to sense the delicate dance of air currents inside the lodge. The teepee does not simply warm you by trapping heat. It circulates that heat with a finesse, so natural you barely notice it, unless you're searching for it. You lift your hand slowly, palm open, fingers loose. A faint stream of warm air rises from the fire and glides over your skin before curling upward toward the smoke hole. Beneath that rising warmth, near the floor, cooler air drifts in subtle waves. One widely acknowledged feature of traditional teepee design is its ability to create a self-sustaining convection system. Warm air climbs, cool air settles, and the shape of the lodge gently guides these currents, preventing harsh pockets of cold or oppressive pools of smoke. You lower your hand toward the floor and immediately feel the difference. The air there is cooler, but not biting. It gathers around your ankles before gliding slowly upward, pulled behind the inner liner. Your legs rest right in the middle of the warmest zone, where rising heat pools just enough to make the night comfortable. You shift your toes a little and feel the warmth fold around them like a blanket of invisible silk. A curious little observation noted in some early winter journals mentions that during the coldest nights, people occasionally placed small objects like cedar twigs or thin feathers near the floor to watch how they moved. These objects revealed the air's behavior, showing where drafts might sneak in or where warmth gathered most strongly. You imagine someone doing that now, watching a feather drift lazily upward, tracing the quiet rhythm of the lodge's breath. You lean forward slightly, letting the firelight warm your face. The flames flicker, sending ribbons of heat upward. You watch these ribbons twist, stretch, then vanish into the darker air above. The path they carve shows you how the teepee channels warmth, not in a single plume, but in swirling layers that mingle with the cooler air rising behind the liner. It feels almost like watching invisible rivers flow within the lodge. Your gaze turns toward the smoke hole. You notice how the rising warmth spirals gently rather than shooting straight upward. That spiral movement comes from the poles converging at the top. The poles guide the air in a slow circle, smoothing rough drafts and helping smoke escape without pulling too much warm air with it. You lean your head back and watch the soft eddy of smoke disappearing into the night. This natural swirl of air leads your thoughts to a topic that researchers still debate. Some specialists argue that the spiral effect was an intentional design crafted to improve ventilation over centuries of refinement. Others suggest it emerged incidentally from the conical structure without deliberate planning. You glance upward again, watching the smoke twist gracefully, and find yourself suspecting that people here simply learned from observation. If smoke escaped better with poles angled a certain way, they adapted. Whether intentional or discovered, the result is the same: a lodge that breathes effortlessly. You rest your hands on your knees and close your eyes just long enough to feel the movement of air on your skin. Warm currents stroke your cheeks. Cool currents slip past your ankles. The two meet, mix, and rise again. The sensation is soothing, rhythmic, hypnotic. It lulls your breathing into a slower pace, the kind that preludes sleep. You lean sideways to test another spot near the bedding. Here, the air hugs your ribs and shoulders in a different way. It swirls forward, then up, coaxed by the pull of the fire. Each movement is slow, gentle, guided by the tense shape and the liner's quiet collaboration. You marvel that such a simple structure can orchestrate such a complex pattern of ventilation without a single moving part. Your fingertips skim along the ground, and you feel how the cooler air near the floor is not stagnant. It is always in motion, feeding the fire in small doses, rising behind the liner to meet the smoke moving toward the top. The tipi uses this natural flow to keep the interior comfortable across long nights. Nothing pools excessively, not cold, not heat, not smoke. You sit up and draw a slow breath, noticing how clean the air feels, even with the fire burning steadily. The currents carry smoke upward before it can linger. The warmth never grows stifling because the cooler air collects and lifts it in cycles. Even the scent of burning wood stays light, drifting in layers rather than clinging to your throat. Another charming detail comes to mind, one that seldom gets spoken of. Families often learned to predict changes in weather by watching how the lodge's air currents shifted. When cold fronts approached, the rising warmth became sharper, more vertical. When storms brewed, currents grew restless, swirling unpredictably. Sleeping beneath these signs, people learned to recognize patterns without needing any written charts or instruments. The lodge itself functioned as a quiet barometer. You let your shoulders relax again and touch the inner liner. Warm air brushes upward behind it, feeding the gentle tide of currents above. The liner feels alive, responding to each movement of air. Together, the hides, poles, fire, and shape create a little world where air moves in harmony. It is a system that would impress any engineer, but here it exists without diagrams or measurements. It simply works, shaped by centuries of attentive living. You stretch your legs out, letting the warmest stream of rising air gather around your shins. It feels like the lodge is tucking you in with invisible hands. The ground is firm but softened by bedding. The air above never stagnates. The warmth drifts around you slowly, like sunlight passing through leaves on a windless morning. Your eyelids grow heavy as you sink deeper into that quiet choreography. Winter may roar outside, but inside the teepee, air moves with a gentleness that makes rest feel not just possible but inevitable. There is no harshness here, no abrupt drafts, no stinging pockets of cold, only a balanced, breathing space where warmth and coolness weave around your body in a soothing, rhythmic dance. The lodge exhales softly. You exhale too. And in that moment, wrapped in the calm currents swirling around you, you understand how people slept peacefully through nights of sub-zero cold. Not because they fought the winter, but because they learned to let the air move in harmony with it. You shift a little closer to the hearth, drawn by the glow of embers that pulse like quiet little hearts at the base of the shallow pit. By now you've grown used to the lodge's steady warmth, its gentle air currents, its hush of hides moving with the wind. But the real test of a winter night is not the first few hours after dusk. It is the long stretch until dawn. That is when the cold reaches deepest, when the air outside grows sharpest, when frost creeps across the prairie like a silent animal. And so your eyes settle on the glowing coals, recognizing them as the secret companions that carry warmth through the darkest hours. You lower yourself onto your elbows, leaning closer to examine the fire. It has quieted into a bed of deep red embers, a glowing landscape of tiny craters and shimmering edges. One well-accepted point in accounts of winter Tipi life is that nighttime fires were often allowed to shrink into long-lasting coals, rather than being stoked constantly. Flames dance and devour fuel quickly, but coals endure. They radiate heat steadily, without smoke, without fuss, without waking the sleepers with sudden flares. You reach your hand out and feel the warmth rising from the embers. It is not hot enough to sting, but strong enough to pool warmth across your palms. The glow spreads like honey-colored light across the hides, touching the lower parts of the walls with soft illumination. You can see how this dim glow would last for hours, drifting through families' dreams. You watch as one coal shifts slightly, sliding into a small hollow in the pit. The dome of heat changes shape. You feel the difference in the air almost instantly. A tiny wave of warmth sweeps over your legs. It is astonishing how responsive the lodge is to even the smallest movements of the fire. You sit up a little straighter, appreciating how the pit and coals work together like a living pulse. A detail from various eyewitness notes comes to mind. Some people banked their coals deliberately by burying them lightly under ash before sleep. The ash reduced airflow to the embers, slowing their burn and allowing them to glow for far longer than exposed coals would. You can picture that process now. Someone pushing ash carefully over the heart of the fire with a small stick, preserving heat for the long hours ahead. Your gaze softens as you watch the glowing embers shift from bright orange to deep crimson. They pulse gently, like the heartbeat of the lodge itself. There is something calming, almost meditative, about watching them breathe. You inhale, matching your breath to their rhythm without even meaning to. Then a memory of another charming detail surfaces. In some winter camps, a small stone warmed by the coals would be wrapped in hide and placed at the foot of a sleeping area to keep toes warm until morning. Sometimes children even gave these stones nicknames, treating them like friendly spirits that kept the cold away. You picture a child laughing sleepily as an adult tucks a warm stone beneath their blanket. It makes you smile without realizing it. You glance upward briefly and see how the smoke hole barely releases anything now. Coals produce so little smoke that the air inside the lodge becomes almost perfectly clear. This clarity makes the lodge feel even more serene. The ember's soft glow becomes the main source of light, turning the teepee into a place of deep calm. Another moment passes, and you observe the way the coals cluster together. They huddle in the center, conserving heat, feeding each other's glow. This clustering echoes a practice still discussed among experts who study historical winter living techniques. Some suggest that coals were arranged intentionally at bedtime to shape the direction of heat distribution. Others believe the arrangement was less formal, based simply on experience and instinct. Whatever the approach, the result remains the same: a steady, dependable warmth that lasts until dawn. You gently push a bit of loose ash aside with a stick, watching the embers brighten beneath it. A sudden surge of golden light rises, illuminating the hide walls with a soft bloom before it settles back into a steady glow. The warmth flows outward across the floor, brushing your knees, then fading into the air around you. You sit back again and imagine the entire lodge asleep, bodies curled into robes, heads resting on soft furs, slow breathing all around. In that silence, the coals continue their work. No one stokes them. No one pokes them. They simply live, softly and reliably, giving off heat hour after hour. This continuity lets families sleep without the constant worry of tending flames. You feel grateful for that thought even now. You lean your weight onto your hands and let the warmth relax your shoulders. The coals glow like small suns, steady and unhurried. Outside, the wind may be gathering strength. Snow might drift along the ground in whispering waves. Frost may be creeping across the plains with its crystalline claws. But inside, these embers guard the night. You study one coal in particular, its edges rimmed with gold. If you look closely, you can see tiny cracks glowing from within, as if the heat has carved a secret map inside it. The coal gives off a quiet sound, a faint crackling sigh. You close your eyes briefly and let that sound soothe you. The coals release warmth in cycles, tiny pulses that brush against your skin like gentle breaths. You settle deeper into the bedding, letting those pulses wash over your legs, your arms, your chest. Your breath grows slower, your shoulders sink, and the warmth sinks with you. You picture dawn approaching in hours, soft light touching the horizon. The embers will still be alive then, maybe smaller, maybe dimmer, but still glowing. Someone will stir, stretch, rise quietly, place a few dry sticks onto the coals, and watch the fire bloom back to life in moments. That is the magic of these embers. They hold the promise of flame through the coldest hours. You open your eyes again, taking in the peaceful red glow one last time. The coals murmur their warmth into the lodge. They do not blaze or boast. They simply endure, holding the night together so every dream can unfold in safety. You lie back, letting their quiet light fade gently across your vision. Their warmth gathers around you like a soft embrace. And as your eyelids grow heavy, you understand why winter nights passed so peacefully in lodges like this. The embers never truly sleep. They keep watch so you can. You stretch out your legs again, letting the lingering heat from the embers soak into your calves, and for a moment, you simply breathe in the steady calm of the lodge. The night is deep now. The fire has settled into that quiet, glowing rhythm that makes every movement feel slower, softer. But before anyone drifts fully into sleep, there are always a few gentle tasks that unfold almost without thought, little rituals woven so seamlessly into evening life that they feel less like chores and more like a kind of winding down. These small nighttime routines prepare the lodge for the long hours ahead, guiding the space into a perfect cradle of warmth. You sit up slowly and watch as someone brushes loose bits of bark and ash away from the hearth with a small bundle of twigs. One widely referenced detail in sources describing winter tipi life is that the area around the fire was often kept meticulously clean to prevent stray sparks from catching on hide or bedding. It was not a frantic task, but a calm, familiar one. You can feel the soothing rhythm of it now, as the twigs sweep lightly across the packed earth. You reach out and adjust a small pile of kindling beside the pit, arranging the sticks so they will be easy to grab in the morning. The ember bed no longer needs fuel, but leaving wood nearby ensures that the first person awake can coax the fire back to life without rummaging around in the cold. The act feels like leaving a warm promise waiting for dawn. A soft creak draws your attention to the inner liner. You rise slightly and smooth one section of the hide with your palm. During the night, the liner sometimes shifts subtly as the outer wall moves with the wind. Settling it before sleep ensures that the airflow remains gentle and predictable. You feel the difference instantly. Warmth pools more evenly across your chest and arms. The small adjustment creates a new sense of calm. You turn your head toward the bedding and gently shake out the top layer of robe, allowing pockets of warm air to fill the folds again. A charming little detail preserved in some oral histories describes how families often shook or fluffed their bedding before sleep, not just to warm it, but also to shake off stray sparks, dust, or bits of dried grass. The motion is quiet, but comforting, like smoothing the wrinkles from a favorite blanket before settling in. You lie down again briefly, testing the bedding. The warmth rises around you immediately, your body sinking into the layered hides. You feel how important these small adjustments are. Each one deepens the comfort of the night. Your attention shifts to the small bundles of belongings arranged neatly near the wall. Before sleep, people often checked that tools, moccasins, and garments were positioned away from open spaces where cold drafts might reach them. Wearing warm clothing is helpful, but starting the day with cold boots would be another challenge altogether. A quick check ensures everything will be warm enough to wear or use when morning comes. You rise to your knees again, drawn by a faint sound at the entrance. The flap shifts slightly with the wind. You check the bottom edge and gently press it into place, feeling the snow seal outside. Hold it firm. Keeping that flap low prevents sudden gusts from slipping into the lodge. With a small nod, you let the hide fall back into its resting position. A memory rises, one tucked into an old winter account. Sometimes, before settling in, families would tuck a small pouch of dried herbs near the bedding. The scent, mild and earthy, was believed to calm the spirit. Whether symbolic or simply pleasant to smell, the effect is easy to imagine. You inhale deeply now, catching faint hints of smoke, hide, cedar, nothing harsh, nothing strong, just the sense of a warm home settling into rest. You shift your weight and glance toward the fire pit again. The coals glow steadily. You take a small stick and move a couple of them closer together, not enough to disturb their rest, but enough to cluster their warmth. The glow brightens subtly. You feel heat brush your cheeks. The coals will hold through the night now, steady and reliable. It is a simple action, but one that shapes the hours ahead. You return to the bedding and kneel beside it once more. A lighter hide rests nearby, one that can serve as an extra layer if temperatures drop unexpectedly. You fold it loosely and place it within reach. Out on the plains, weather can shift quickly, especially at night. Having an extra robe to pull over your shoulders ensures you do not lose warmth during sleep. You move to a spot near the wall where small cloth bags hang from pegs. People stored cherished items there, sometimes personal tokens or small tools. Ensuring they hang securely prevents them from brushing against the hide walls when the wind pushes outside. It is a quiet assurance, a way of saying that everything has its place, even in the soft chaos of winter nights. As you settle once more near the hearth, your thoughts drift to a long-running discussion among anthropologists. Some suggest that these nighttime routines were highly ritualized, almost ceremonial. Others believe they were simply practical actions shaped by necessity. Watching yourself move through them now, you suspect the truth blends both ideas. Practical actions soothe the mind as much as they prepare the space. They are rituals, not because they were formally declared as such, but because they bring peace. You exhale slowly, letting your breath join the warm currents shaping the air. The lodge feels ready now. The fire is banked, the liner is settled, the bedding is warm, the tools are in place. Every quiet task has been done with gentle intention, shaping the night into something safe and inviting. You lie down once again, resting your head on the softest hide. Your limbs sink into the bedding. The warmth gathers around your ribs, your shoulders, your legs. Outside, the wind brushes against the lodge, muted and respectful. Inside, everything is calm. These quiet chores, simple as they seem, transform the lodge into a sanctuary. They turn winter into something that can be slept through rather than feared. And as your eyes begin to drift closed, you sense that this moment of preparation carries you toward the deeper, slower rhythms of night. The lodge breathes, you breathe with it, and the darkness becomes gentle. You breathe in the warm air slowly, letting your lungs fill with the quiet comfort of the lodge, when a soft rustle draws your gaze toward the bedding on the opposite side. There, a pair of shapes settles close together beneath overlapping robes, shoulders touching lightly in the glow of the fire. The sight makes you pause. Warmth in a winter tipi did not come only from hides, fire, liners, snow seals, or careful design. It also came from people themselves. Their closeness, their shared breath, their steady presence beside one another created a living source of heat that carried families through the coldest nights. You shift onto your side, the bedding folding gently around your hips, and imagine how the lodge must have looked on a frigid evening long ago. People nestled shoulder to shoulder, feet pointed toward the ember bed, bodies arranged in an instinctive pattern that preserved warmth. One well-known observation in historical writings is that families slept close, not only for comfort, but for efficiency. Humans are warm creatures. When grouped together, they create a pocket of heat that grows steadily through the night. You feel that truth now, as you sit closer to the fire, sensing how your own warmth radiates outward. You adjust the robe around your chest and notice the air shift when you lean back. Just the presence of another person sitting near you would change the microclimate instantly, amplifying the heat in subtle waves. The idea feels simple, but inside a winter tipi, it mattered deeply. 2 bodies create more warmth than 1. 3 create still more. You picture an entire family cocooned beneath buffalo robes, bodies curled gently toward each other, while the coals glow quietly nearby. A small memory from an early winter account drifts into your thoughts. Some parents encouraged their children to sleep between adults during the coldest parts of winter so that their body heat stayed centralized. The children would shift around during the night, tucking their cold feet beneath a parent's legs, or pressing their faces into warm fur layers. The warmth created by these simple gestures was enough to keep the night comfortable without relying on a bright fire. You stretch your arms above your head, then let them fall loosely against the bedding. The warmth around you grows as your body settles. As you breathe deeply, you can imagine how the shared heat of several people would accumulate beneath thick robes. Their combined breathing would warm the air inside the bedding just as the fire warmed the air above it. A small sound catches your attention, a quiet laugh, perhaps memory or imagination, but you feel the echo of many evenings where warmth was not only physical, but emotional. Companionship softened winter. People told jokes, whispered stories, teased one another with sleepy humor before drifting off. Laughter itself warms the chest, loosens tightness, and makes cold nights feel less threatening. You shift toward the center of the lodge, leaning your back against a robe. The fire flickers in front of you. You can almost feel the ghost of someone sitting beside you, offering another layer of warmth. It is a gentle reminder that warmth is not only a product of structure, it is also a product of presence. Another detail from winter recollections comes to mind. Some families slept with dogs curled at their feet or nestled against their sides. The animal's body heat helped keep toes warm and bedding cozy. A medium-sized dog can radiate surprising warmth, more than enough to ease someone through a bitter night. You imagine such a scene now, a small dog snoring softly while pressed against a calf, its breath drifting into the layered hides. You adjust your position, letting the bedding shift beneath your hip. As you settle again, you feel the layers cradle you with gentle pressure. If someone were beside you now, that pressure would feel doubled, creating a cocoon of warmth impossible to achieve alone. It is no wonder families slept close. Night after night, the lodge gathered everyone into shared comfort. Your thoughts drift for a moment to the quiet debates among anthropologists. Some argue that shared sleeping arrangements followed strict patterns determined by age and status. Others believe that warmth and practicality shaped the nightly order far more than custom. Watching the bedding ripple across the lodge floor, you suspect the truth is flexible. When winter pressed hardest, people likely arranged themselves in whatever pattern created the most warmth and ease. You lie back, resting your shoulders against the bedding, and imagine this warmth filling the lodge when many bodies sleep at once. The air grows heavier, softer. The space feels fuller, cozier. The fire does less work because the people do more. You breathe in deeply and feel your chest expand into that imagined warmth. A charming little detail from some oral traditions mentions that children often teased each other about stealing heat. If one child rolled closer to a sibling, the other might whisper half asleep, "Stop taking my warmth," even as both melted into the shared comfort. You can almost hear that soft bickering, warm rather than annoyed, drifting through the dim firelit space. You sit up again, rubbing your hands together. Warmth builds quickly with movement. If someone next to you did the same, the effect would increase. You picture a family stretching, adjusting robes, taking a drink of warm broth before bed. Each motion adds a little more warmth into the shared cocoon. You turn your head slightly, imagining the quiet rise and fall of sleeping breaths around you. Those steady exhales fill the bedding with warm air, creating a layer of heat beneath the hides. Paired breaths blend together, forming a small ecosystem of shared warmth. Even when the fire fades to coals, warmth remains abundant. Your gaze drifts to the place where the bedding gently dips toward the center. That dip naturally collects warmth from several bodies lying together. You lie back into it, letting the hides mold to your shoulder blades. The sensation is soothing, like sinking into a warm nest shaped by many nights of shared rest. You shift your elbow and imagine someone doing the same beside you. Their movement would shift the bedding just enough to let a puff of warm air escape, only to be replaced by another puff from deeper inside the layered hides. Sleep becomes a communal act. Warmth becomes a shared resource, not a private one. You tilt your head toward the entrance and notice how still the flap hangs. No harsh drafts reach you. The entire lodge feels settled, protective. In such stillness, body heat becomes the most reliable warmth of all. It does not flicker like fire. It does not depend on fuel. It is steady, patient, and generous. You inhale again, and your breath joins the soft haze of warmth around you. Even alone, you feel how the bedding and air store your heat, but imagining others nearby makes the lodge feel that much safer. Night deepens, the fire quiets, and your body, along with every imagined companion, becomes part of the lodge's warmth, a living circle of heat. This, too, is how people survived the fiercest cold, not by isolating themselves, but by resting close, letting warmth pass gently from one body to another, shaping winter into something softer and more humane. You let your body sink deeper into the warm bedding, feeling the slow pulse of air rising from the coals, when your thoughts drift to something far quieter, but just as important as fire or hides: sleeping direction. In a winter tipi, even the way a person positioned their body mattered. You shift your weight and notice how different the warmth feels when your feet point toward the fire compared to when your head does. This simple detail shaped comfort through long, sub-zero nights. You ease yourself into a sitting position and stretch your legs toward the hearth. Immediately, a soft wash of heat collects around your ankles and calves. One commonly noted feature in winter accounts is that sleepers often rested with their feet angled toward the fire, so that warmth flowed naturally toward the extremities most vulnerable to the cold. You flex your toes, and the warmth greets them gently, like dipping the edge of a blanket into a tide of heat. You lie back again, imagining how a whole family might align themselves around the fire, each person positioned so that heat drifted toward their legs and feet. This arrangement not only made nights warmer, but also prevented frostbite during sudden drops in temperature. You can feel the practicality of the position as your own legs begin to thaw. A small, amusing detail from old winter stories floats into your memory. Some people believed that pointing your head directly toward the fire could make dreams too vivid or restless, because the warm air stirred too much around the face. Whether symbolic or practical, many chose instead to keep their heads turned slightly away from the hearth, allowing mild currents of warmth to brush their cheeks without overwhelming them. You test the theory now, turning your face slightly to the side. The air feels gentler, and your breath drifts more calmly into the room. You shift onto your side, curling gently as someone might on a bitterly cold night. The warmth around your torso is soft and even, but the direction of your body subtly shapes how heat gathers. You realize that if you placed your back to the fire instead of your feet, your lower body would miss the full benefit of the ember glow. The lodge's design encourages you to take advantage of every angle of warmth. Another idea rises, one that researchers still discuss with quiet enthusiasm. Some argue that sleepers traditionally oriented themselves based on cultural symbolism, aligning their bodies so their heads faced east, toward the rising sun. Others claim that winter practicality overrode symbolism, especially during the coldest months. Watching the light flicker across the bedding, you suspect both ideas lived comfortably together, a respect for tradition balanced with the need for warmth. You slide one hand beneath the robe and let the trapped heat curl around your chest. As you breathe deeply, you feel how the bedding warms differently, depending on where your shoulders rest. If your shoulders angle slightly toward the fire, heat gathers more deeply along your upper back. If you shift them away, the warmth concentrates more around your hips and legs. Each position changes the way warmth moves across your body. You stretch out fully again and point your feet toward the hearth. A sigh escapes your lips without thinking. This position feels right. The warmth reaches you like a soft tide rolling upward from your toes, filling your calves, creeping toward your knees. Your torso benefits from the rising heat swirling through the air. Your head, tucked gently into the folds of a robe, stays surrounded by mild, steady air without overheated drafts. A charming footnote in some oral histories mentions that elders sometimes advised children to sleep in a particular orientation so the fire's glow would wake them gently at dawn. Placed just so, a flicker of returning flame would touch their eyelids lightly as the morning fire was rekindled. You picture a sleepy child blinking in the orange light, rubbing their face with tiny fists before sitting up wrapped in a robe. You roll onto your back again, letting the hides cradle your spine. The fire's glow plays across the poles and walls, shimmering upward like warm breath. The airflow drifts down, then up again, forming a kind of thermal cradle around you. Your body becomes part of that gentle equilibrium. You stretch your hands above your head and rest them lightly on the hide surface. The air there feels cooler, not cold, but calm. It is easy to understand why people avoided sleeping with their heads toward the outer walls during the harshest nights. Cooler air slid naturally down the hides before rising along the liner. You imagine resting your head there without protection and feeling tiny threads of cold tickle your scalp. But the bedding, the robes, and careful orientation prevented that. A deep breath fills your lungs. You let it go slowly, feeling your chest rise and fall in a rhythm that mirrors the quiet drafts drifting through the lodge. Everything here reflects cooperation between body and shelter. Sleeping position is simply one more part of that partnership. You curl onto your side once more and pull the robe closer. Your feet stay warm near the fire. Your torso catches the soft, rising warmth. Your head rests in a cooler pocket that encourages slow, deep breathing, the kind that eases you towards sleep. This balance echoes centuries of experience. Another interesting detail comes to mind. Some families place small cushions or folded hides at their backs or under their knees to help maintain the best position throughout the night. These gentle supports kept the body angled so warmth flowed naturally. You shift your own body and feel the bedding adjust, offering its own support. You turn your face toward the coals. They glow faintly, like distant stars settling into rest. The position you hold feels instinctive, shaped by the fire, the bedding, the airflow. Your body relaxes fully, limbs melting into the softness beneath you. Outside, the wind sighs along the surface of the lodge. Inside, your breath blends with the warm air. You feel the difference the angle of your body makes. It becomes a small but essential part of surviving a winter night, a quiet act of wisdom. Your eyelids droop, the fire's glow gathers around your feet, warmth travels up your legs in patient waves. Your head rests in cool, steady air. Your whole body feels in harmony with the shelter. This is how people slept warm in the coldest nights, not by chance, but by knowing exactly how to place themselves within the lodge's breath. You lie still for a moment, feeling the warmth pulse gently around your legs, when a soft sound drifts into your awareness. At first you think it is only the fire settling into a new shape, but then you hear it again. A quieter, more rhythmic breath. You turn your head just slightly, and in your mind's eye you see the shape of a dog curled beside the bedding, paws tucked neatly beneath its chest, nose pressed into its own tail. The presence of animals inside a winter lodge was not only practical but deeply comforting. Their warmth, their soft movements, their steady breathing all joined the lodge's quiet harmony. You shift your hand across the bedding, imagining coarse fur beneath your palm. One often mentioned detail in winter descriptions is that dogs slept inside the tipi, not merely as companions, but as living sources of heat. A medium-sized dog radiates a surprising amount of warmth, more than enough to warm cold toes or the bottom layers of bedding through the night. You picture a blanket of fur pressed gently against someone's side, offering a steady supply of heat long after the fire quiets. You sit up slightly, letting the robe slide across your lap. In the dim glow of the embers, you sense how naturally an animal would settle near the warmest place. Dogs, like people, sought the soft glow of the hearth, their bodies stretched out, paws splayed, settling into the same warm currents that rise from the shallow pit. You imagine one lifting its head briefly, sniffing the air, adjusting its position, then resting again with a sigh. A small recollection from early travelers' notes comes to mind. Some families treated their dogs almost like additional family members during winter nights, giving them dedicated spots near the bedding. These dogs helped guard the camp by day and warmed the lodge by night. Their presence added a layer of quiet security. You can picture it now, a dog's ears twitching softly whenever the wind changed tone, long before a person heard anything unusual. You recline again, resting your shoulder against the bedding. The warmth around you remains steady, but imagining an animal curled beside your ribs adds an extra element of comfort. You feel how the shared warmth would deepen, filling the space between bodies like a second fire. Even without touching, the proximity alone would soften winter's bite. Another animal comes to your thoughts, one less commonly mentioned but still part of certain winter worlds. A small pony or horse, standing just outside the lodge, tethered near the entrance for warmth and safety. In some winter camps, people allowed young or vulnerable animals to stand close enough that their body heat gently warmed the ground near the entrance, preventing cold drafts from creeping in too harshly when the flap opened. Some accounts even mention very young animals briefly brought inside during severe blizzards, sheltered beneath blankets or robes until the worst passed. You run your hand along the bedding again and imagine the soft, rhythmic breath of an animal nearby. That sound soothed many sleepers through icy nights. It reminded them that they were not alone, that warmth and companionship remained even when the land outside froze solid. You sit up a bit straighter and glance toward the hide wall as a faint rustle echoes from outside. You picture a dog rising to its feet, shaking a dusting of frost from its coat before padding to the entrance and listening. The sound of paws on packed earth would be soft, comforting. Animals inside winter lodges were not restless, they were attuned. Their presence felt like part of the nightly routine. A discussion that sometimes arises among experts studying winter camp life touches on just how commonly animals slept inside. Some suggest that dogs nearly always shared the lodge during winter, while larger animals remained outside except in emergencies. Others argue that practices varied widely by tribe, climate, and available resources. You sense both perspectives holding truth. Here, in this warm space, it is easy to understand why dogs in particular would be welcomed as additional warmth and alert companions. You inch your hand outward across the bedding, imagining the thick fur of a winter coat brushing against your fingertips. The softness blends into the warmth of the hides beneath you. You breathe in slowly, and a faint scent of animal musk mixes with the smoke lingering in the lodge. It feels natural, earthy, grounding. You turn your face toward the hearth. The embers glow gently, highlighting the space around you with amber light. The imagined dog lies across your feet now, its body warming your ankles in a way even the coals cannot. The sensation deepens your sense of safety. A charming bit of memory rises from earlier accounts. Children often used dogs as living pillows, resting their heads on the animal's flanks during winter nights. The dogs tolerated it with patient warmth, their bodies rising and falling beneath the weight of small dreams. You can almost hear the soft snoring of such a scene, mixed with the crackle of the fire. You pull your robe closer, letting it fall warmly along your chest. The imagined presence of animals enriches the shelter's comfort, turning the lodge into a small ecosystem of shared heat. Humans and animals breathed the same warm air, slept on the same layered bedding, and curled into the same glow of the coals. You lie down again, stretching your legs slightly until your feet reach the warm zone just before the hearth. In your mind, the dog shifts, then curls around your shins, sealing the warmth with its thick winter coat. Your breath merges with the soft warmth rising from the bedding. Outside, the wind continues its slow song. Inside, life moves in quieter rhythms. The breathing of sleepers, the soft settling of hides, the occasional twitch of an animal dreaming beside the fire. You close your eyes halfway, feeling the warmth gather again around your chest and shoulders. Your limbs grow heavier, the fire glows softer, and the imagined dog beside you becomes part of the night's steady comfort. Body heat, shared space, the companionship of animals, these formed an unseen layer of protection, a warmth that does not flicker like flame, a warmth that moves, breathes, and stays. You exhale slowly. The lodge holds you. The night deepens. And beside you, in memory or imagination, an animal sleeps, guarding the warmth of the dream. You lie still for a few breaths, letting the warmth from the imagined dog fade gently into the broader comfort of the lodge, when a new awareness rises at the edges of your thoughts. This teepee is warm, sheltered, and carefully arranged, but it is only one night in a long season. Winter on the plains does not sit still. It shifts, changes mood, sharpens suddenly, softens unexpectedly. And the people who lived here understood something essential. To sleep warm through the coldest months, you did not merely prepare your lodge, you prepared your world. You moved with the seasons, choosing the safest and warmest places long before the first snow ever touched the ground. You push yourself upright slowly, the bedding folding softly behind you. The fire glows in its quiet cradle. The walls breathe in their subtle rhythm, and you picture the great open plains beyond this single lodge, stretching mile after mile. One often mentioned fact in historical accounts is that many plains nations practiced seasonal mobility, shifting camp locations to follow food, shelter, and microclimates. Winter camps were rarely placed at random. They were selected with an almost intuitive knowledge of where the land held its own heat pockets. You lift the entrance flap and peer outside. The cold greets you immediately, brushing your cheeks with the sharpness of night air. But now, instead of feeling overwhelmed by the vastness, you imagine the landscape through the eyes of someone who knows it intimately. You notice the way the earth dips near the tree line, forming a shallow basin where wind slows. You sense how the woods beyond might block the harshest gusts. You step outside for a moment and feel how the cold behaves differently in the shelter of the land. Calmer, less biting. You tug your robe closer and turn in a slow circle. Winter camps often gathered near wooded river valleys, sheltered coulees, or south-facing slopes where sunlight lingered longest. You can almost feel the warmer pockets even now, the way snow melts just a little faster in certain hollows, the way the wind seems to pass overhead rather than through them. A small but intriguing detail surfaces from some early writings. Families sometimes scouted winter sites months ahead, noticing how frost formed on the grasses, how the wind travelled around outcrops, how animals behaved near certain ridges. These signs revealed where winter would be least fierce. You imagine someone walking this land in autumn, pausing to watch the grass lean under the wind, reading the landscape like a story written in motion. You step farther from the lodge, planting your feet in the snow. The cold presses against your legs, but you also sense the earth beneath the crust. You imagine how winter camps aligned themselves along groves or creek beds, where trees offered both fuel and wind protection. You picture several tipis nestled in a natural horseshoe of hill and woodland, forming their own sheltered valley within a larger wilderness. When the wind brushes your robe again, you notice how it whistles differently depending on where you stand. That sound reminds you of something researchers often discuss: whether winter migrations followed fixed traditional routes or adapted yearly to changing weather. Some studies suggest families return to the same sheltered places each winter. Others say they shifted more fluidly, letting instinct and scouting guide them. The truth likely blended both patterns, shaped by experience and the land's changing moods. You kneel to touch the snow, then rise again, breath drifting upward like smoke. In your mind, you see people traveling together in early winter, bundled in robes, moving slowly but confidently toward a chosen site. Horses carry poles and hides. Dogs trot alongside with small packs. The group moves toward safety, toward warmth, toward a place where the wind cannot reach so easily. A gentle thrill runs through you at the thought. Warmth here is not merely built, it is chosen. You walk a little farther, imagining the way the land once guided migrations. A cut in the hills where wind died down. A stand of cottonwoods offering steady firewood. A bank where the snow drifted predictably, providing good insulation for the lodges. These details shape the seasons like invisible hands. You turn back toward the lodge now glowing softly behind you. The warm oval of light looks even more welcoming against the snowy dark. You start walking toward it, crunching softly through the frozen layer, thinking about how this teepee would have been one of many arranged in careful patterns across the chosen winter site. Families would have lived close, sharing the warmth of the land and each other. Another small detail comes to mind. During especially harsh winters, some camps positioned themselves near natural hot springs or geothermal soils, where the ground held unexpected warmth. These sites were rare but cherished, offering a kind of gift from the earth itself. You imagine sleeping above gently warmed ground, the hides beneath you collecting that heat like a natural mattress. You reach the entrance flap again and lift it. Warmth greets you instantly, washing over your cheeks like a soft evening tide. You step inside and let the flap fall behind you. The contrast feels magical. Outside, the world is immense, frozen, unforgiving. Inside, warmth gathers softly in layers, held in place by structure and fire and care. You sit down beside the bedding, stretching your hands toward the embers. As heat flows into your palms, you think about the migrations again. They were not frantic escapes from cold. They were intentional movements toward better warmth. People moved not out of fear but out of wisdom. The liner stirs slightly as a small draft lifts behind it. The hide walls flex in their quiet rhythm. The air around the hearth is calm and clean. You lie down again, feeling how your body sinks into the bedding with ease. This lodge is warm because of what surrounds it. The chosen land, the sheltered valley, the thoughtful placement of each tipi. Warmth begins long before the fire is lit. Your eyes soften as the ember glow stretches across the roof poles. The knowledge of generations rests here with you, guiding you into comfort. And tonight, as winter deepens outside, you understand that survival was not just about enduring the cold, it was about knowing the land so well that warmth could always be found, even in the harshest months, even under sub-zero skies. You settle back into the bedding, pulling a robe up along your ribs, but even wrapped in this warm cocoon you sense that winter is never fully predictable. Out on the plains, storms do not always announce themselves politely. Sometimes they rush in like a living force, driven by sudden shifts in the sky, swallowing the landscape in swirling white. And as you close your eyes for a moment, the memory of earlier cold nudges at you, reminding you that the people here did not simply rely on luck. They prepared for the kind of blizzards that could sweep across the prairie with a ferocity you can barely imagine. You push yourself upright and glance toward the entrance flap. Tonight the wind is quiet, but you can easily picture the sudden roar of a true winter storm, how it bends even the strongest lodge poles and pushes snow against the hide walls in thick, relentless waves. One widely referenced detail in historical accounts describes how families treated blizzard preparation as instinct, not panic. Everyone knew what to do, and they did it calmly, often with the same quiet rhythm as their nightly chores. You rise to your feet, walking slowly toward the entrance. With your fingers, you press against the flap. It feels solid, weighted slightly by the snowbank outside. But in a real storm, someone would check this flap repeatedly, making sure no gap formed where icy gusts could slip through. You picture hands smoothing it down, securing it with extra ties, pushing snow more tightly against the base to create a stronger seal. You kneel and touch the lower hide of the lodge. In a blizzard, people sometimes reinforced the base with extra robes or mats from inside, doubling the insulation where snow alone was not enough. A small detail from Winter Memories notes that some families even used rolled-up bundles of dried grass to fill tiny gaps where the wind might try to pry its way in. You can feel that precaution now, imagining the soft pressure of those bundles pressed into place. You sit back on your heels and look around the lodge. Everything inside becomes more precious during a storm. The fire must be watched with steady attention, kept small and disciplined so sparks do not wander. You lean toward the hearth, seeing how low the flames sit, perfectly behaved. If a blizzard howled outside, you would keep it exactly like this, quiet, slow, and reliable, banked with just enough coals to preserve warmth without sending smoke swirling into the air. Your gaze travels upward toward the smoke hole. Adjusting the flaps becomes essential during a storm. Too open, and snow could drift inside. Too closed, and smoke might gather. A delicate balance forms. Someone would rise through the night to check the angle of the poles. But no, you don't use that symbol. So you imagine someone stepping to the side of the lodge, giving the flap poles a careful shift, letting the wind's force become an ally rather than an intruder. The flaps could redirect snow, letting it slip along the outer wall instead of cascading inside. Another detail, often described in winter accounts, is that people rearranged their sleeping positions during blizzards. They would cluster closer together, forming a tighter pocket of shared warmth. You imagine moving your bedding just a little closer to the fire pit, shifting so your shoulders angle nearer to another sleeper. The warmth would deepen instantly, becoming a small shield against the storm's icy breath. You pull your robe tighter, imagining the muffled roar of wind outside. Snow would slap the hides in rhythmic bursts, building up in thick walls around the perimeter. Instead of fearing that weight, people welcomed it. The snowpack became a natural insulator, reinforcing the lodge, thickening its ability to hold warmth. You imagine waking in the middle of the night to notice that the wind sounds softer, not because it has faded, but because the lodge has grown stronger with every drift. Your thoughts drift to a quiet debate among scholars who study Plains winter lifeways. Some assert that people anticipated blizzards long before they arrived, reading signs in the sky, in the behavior of animals, or in sudden drops in temperature. Others argue that storms were too unpredictable to foresee, and preparations were always ready, regardless of warning. You can sense the truth bending somewhere between those ideas. Experience makes its own weather sense. A shifting breeze here, a strange stillness there. People learn to recognize these signs long before science named them. You walk toward the bedding and sink down again. The lodge feels warm now, almost impossibly so compared to the icy world outside. You picture how, during a storm, every person inside might listen to the howling wind beyond the walls, yet feel sheltered, protected. A storm might rage loudly, but inside the tipi, life slows into a quiet hum. A charming little detail from oral history mentions that during fierce blizzards, people sometimes told softer stories before sleep, so their words would not be lost under the storm's roar. These stories were simple, warm, soothing, meant to guide the mind away from fear and toward rest. You imagine such a story now, whispered near the embers, carrying only comfort. You draw your knees up, wrapping your arms around them for a moment. Even sitting like this, you feel how the bedding, the walls, the liner, and the snowpack work together. No draft cuts across your skin, no sudden chill touches your neck. The tipi becomes almost like a snow den, protected not despite the storm, but because of it. Your hand drifts across the hide floor, feeling its faint warmth. People once knew that the storm outside could strengthen their shelter, not weaken it. Snow pressed tight, wind shaped the outer walls into firmer curves, and the fire inside glowed with confident steadiness. You lie back again, letting your head rest on the softest part of the bedding. The imagined roar of the blizzard becomes a distant rhythm, like waves breaking far away. You feel no fear, only quiet respect. Even in the worst storms, warmth was preserved through calm movements, practiced habits, shared heat, and trust in the structure around them. The tipi was designed not just to stand against the cold, but to embrace the weather, turning the fiercest blizzard into a muted drumbeat on its walls. You exhale softly, the lodge holds steady, and you understand that survival here was not about resisting winter's fury. It was about knowing how to let winter's force become part of the shelter. You rest your palm against the warm hide beside you, feeling the steady pulse of the lodge, when a gentle shift in the air draws your attention. The ember light softens, the liner sways slightly, and you begin to imagine the sound of voices rising quietly in the dim glow. Evening in a winter tipi was never only about survival. It was also about connection. Stories, ceremonies, and shared words warmed the night just as much as fire and furs. You settled deeper into the bedding, letting your body relax as the atmosphere of the lodge transforms from simple shelter into a place of memory, tradition, and comfort. You picture a gathering forming around the hearth, not a loud one, not a boisterous circle, a peaceful, end-of-day moment when people draw close to the embers and speak in low voices. One well-known point, reflected in many winter accounts, is that storytelling often took place after the day's work fell quiet. The fire's gentle glow offered the perfect backdrop. Shadows flickered against the hides, creating shapes that swayed with each word, each breath. You shift onto one elbow, leaning closer to the imaginary circle. The warmth from the coals brushes your cheek. You can almost hear the soft cadence of stories told for generations. Some may have described how the world was formed. Others recounted old hunts, lessons learned, trickster tales that made even a frigid night feel playful. As you listen in your imagination, you feel the lodge brighten with meaning, far beyond simple heat. A small detail preserved in early descriptions comes to mind. Some families placed a small ceremonial object or bundle near the fire during winter evenings, something simple but meaningful, a quiet reminder of the connection between people, land, and ancestors. These were not elaborate rituals, but gentle gestures that offered a sense of grounding. The presence of such objects feels natural here, fitting beside the coal's soft glow. You rest your head back for a moment, letting the warmth gather across your shoulders. Then, another thought drifts in. Some anthropologists have noted that people often use stories as part of teaching children how to interpret winter, lessons about respect for the cold, how to care for the fire, how to sleep safely, all blended into tales that were entertaining but quietly instructive. You imagine a child leaning against an elder's side, eyelids drooping as the words weave warmth around them. You inhale slowly, catching the faint scent of smoke and hide. In your mind, the storyteller's voice changes tone, rising slightly as they describe a moment of danger or dipping into a whisper as they reveal a secret known only to the clever. The fire responds with tiny sparks. The roof poles glow in soft pulses. The liner lifts and falls as though listening too. A quiet disagreement sometimes appears among researchers who study Plains storytelling traditions. Some believe winter stories were reserved for specific months, spoken only during the cold season. Others argue the rules were flexible, shifting with need and circumstance. Sitting here, wrapped in warmth and quiet, you can sense why winter felt like the ideal time. Darkness deepens the imagination. Fire opens the mind. The cold outside makes every word feel more alive. You shift your weight again and picture the circle growing wider as more people settle down. One person might hum softly while tending the coals. Another might braid a small strip of hide. A child might mimic an animal sound to make someone laugh. These small motions create their own warmth. Another charming detail rises in your thoughts. Some winter evenings included quiet singing, not dramatic songs, but low, rhythmic melodies that floated around the room like warm smoke. These songs were often personal or familial, meant to soothe or bring peace. You imagine such a melody now, drifting through the lodge in soft vibrations that settle into your bones. You place your hand over your chest and feel your breathing slow to match the imagined rhythm. The firelight flickers brighter, then softer. The stories flow into songs. The songs melt back into quiet conversation, creating a blend of sound and warmth that would make even the longest night feel shorter. You turn your head slightly and imagine elders speaking softly as the younger ones listen. Their voices carry wisdom shaped by countless winters. How to read snow, how to follow migrating herds, how to settle a lodge so the wind behaves. Their words feel as warm as the fire itself. Even now, you sense the comfort of knowledge passed patiently from one generation to the next. The air in the lodge shifts again, warm currents brushing your hands. You imagine someone adding a small piece of wood to the embers, just enough to brighten the glow but not enough to disrupt the calm. Sparks rise like tiny stars, merging with the soft darkness above. You feel yourself drifting. The warmth, the imagined voices, the gentle movements, all of them soften your thoughts. You sink deeper into the bedding, letting the robe drape around your shoulders. Even without actual speakers beside you, the memory of their presence lingers in the structure itself. You close your eyes halfway, letting the imagined sound of a final story settle into the room, a tale about transformation, or a lesson hidden in animal behavior. or a playful adventure told to make children giggle before they sleep. Whatever the tale, its warmth lingers. You exhale, and the air leaves your lungs slowly, joining the calm exchange of breath in the lodge. The cold outside dissolves into silence. Inside, the combination of warmth, voices, and shared spirit creates a refuge deeper than simple shelter. This is how winter nights were softened. Through fire, yes, but also through stories, through gentle ceremony, through gathering in the glow of familiar voices, letting the night become gentle, meaningful, safe. You sink fully into the bedding now. The warmth deepens around you. The stories drift toward silence. And sleep rises like a slow tide. You shift slightly beneath your robe, letting the calm of the imagined storytelling circle fade into a deeper quiet, when a thought rises like a soft ember in your mind. The tipi you rest in now feels so perfectly balanced, so effortlessly warm, that it would be easy to assume every lodge across the plains looked and behaved exactly like this. But winter shelters, like languages or songs, varied across nations. Each tribe shaped its lodge with its own materials, climate, traditions, and innovations. The warmth you feel now is only one version of many, each tailored by centuries of adaptation. You sit up a little, the bedding whispering beneath you, and look around the teepee with renewed attention. One detail well supported in historical descriptions is that different plains peoples customized the thickness, number, and arrangement of hide covers, depending on their region. Some lodged in areas where winters were brutally dry and windswept. Others lived near forests or river lowlands where snow collected differently. You can imagine the subtle shifts in construction that these environments encouraged. You reach out and touch the inner liner again. Here it hangs in a loose, breathable curve. But among some groups, liners were made from lighter materials in warmer climates, or doubled in regions where storms were fierce. The hide thickness, the gap between layers, even the height of the liner itself shifted quietly from one nation to another. You can sense how these adjustments changed the feeling of warmth inside. A small, fascinating detail comes to mind. In some communities, especially those in wooded or riparian environments, winter lodges occasionally incorporated bits of woven rush mats or bark panels as supplementary insulation. These materials added a unique scent and texture to the interior, blending plant fibers with hide. You imagine brushing your fingers along such a panel and feeling its cool, smooth surface beneath the warm air. You adjust your sitting position, leaning your back against the bedding. The warmth cradles you. As you rest your head against the hides, another thought drifts in. Some tipis used by nations living closer to dense forests were slightly steeper in angle, helping snow slide down more quickly during heavy wet storms. Others, especially where the climate was drier, kept a wider, rounder shape to maximize heat circulation. You see the geometry shifting in your mind, each lodge molded by its land. Your gaze rises to the poles overhead. Their arrangement, though familiar, could subtly differ too. Some groups used more poles for stability in snowy regions. Others relied on fewer, creating lighter, more portable structures ideal for rapid seasonal movement. The difference seems small until you imagine how it changes the weight on your shoulders during travel. A topic that scholars discuss frequently comes to mind now. Some researchers claim that winter lodges across the plains followed shared structural principles passed between nations through trade, intermarriage, and observation. Others believe the heart of each design remained strongly rooted in local tradition, with similarities arising only from the shared pressures of climate. Sitting here, feeling the warm air flow up through the tipi's core, you sense truth in both ideas. Knowledge traveled? Yes, but so did the wisdom of land and experience. You shift closer to the fire, catching its glow on your hands. Another detail emerges. Some groups preferred to use a slightly raised platform for sleeping, built from wood or packed grass beneath the hides. This raised sleeping area stayed warmer because heat rises and cold sinks. In other regions where wood was scarce, bedding rested directly on layered hides, relying on thickness instead of height. You imagine lying on both styles, one buoyed by a small rise above the ground, the other cushioned by pure hide softness. You rest your palm against the teepee floor and consider another difference. In plains regions where bitter winds cut hardest, people often secured an extra outer wrap of hide around the windward side of the lodge. This reinforced layer could be removed quickly in milder weather. Elsewhere, where breezes were gentler, this extra covering may not have been needed at all. The feeling inside would shift dramatically depending on these adaptations. A quiet image enters your thoughts. Lodges in northern areas where snow piled high might allow drifts to settle naturally around their bases, forming a deep insulating ring. Farther south, where snowfall was lighter, people banked earth or brush instead. The land itself transformed the way warmth was shaped. You stretch your legs toward the fire. The warmth finds you easily, flowing around your ankles. As you sink deeper into the bedding, you imagine visiting another camp, perhaps one from a neighboring nation. The scent would be slightly different, maybe more pine from nearby forests, or more sage from open plains. The draft patterns would shift. The poles might be a shade shorter or longer, but the sense of warmth, of safety in winter, would remain at the heart of it all. Another quiet observation surfaces from old accounts. Some groups favored specific animal hides for their covers, using elk or moose when buffalo was scarce. Each hide type affected the insulation, weight, and movement of the lodge differently. A moose hide cover, for instance, might feel heavier and more rigid, altering how the walls responded to wind. You imagine resting your palm on such a wall and feeling its firmness. You lie back again, tilting your head slightly so you can see the smoke hole above. Even the design of this opening varied. Some tribes crafted flaps that rose more steeply. Others preferred wide, gently angled flaps that responded differently to shifting winds. Each variation guided smoke with its own personality. You inhale through your nose and taste the air. It is warm, earthy, and tinged with wood smoke. But if you were in a lodge built by another nation, the air might carry a different fragrance, perhaps from different woods used in the fire, or different smoking techniques used to treat hides. The diversity across tribes did more than create different sleeping environments. It reflected unique relationships between people and their homelands. Warmth was not simply engineered, it was crafted through tradition, land, animals, and memory. You let your head sink deeper into the bedding. The fire flickers softly. The wall moves in its slow breath. You feel wrapped not only in warmth but in the knowledge that many winter lodges existed, each with its own logic, its own style, its own way of tending the cold. And as your eyelids grow heavier, you understand something gentle and profound. There was no single way to sleep warmly in a teepee. There were many ways, each shaped by a people's story. You shift your weight, feeling the bedding adjust beneath you, when another layer of winter knowledge settles into your thoughts. Warmth in the tipi came from the land, from hides, from fire, from people themselves, but it also evolved over time. As trade networks stretched across the plains and contact with distant communities grew, people gained access to new materials, metal tools, wool cloth, kettles, needles, beads that quietly transformed how winter life unfolded. These items did not replace traditional practices, but they enhanced them, adding convenience and subtle improvements to the nightly rhythm of warmth. You sit up slowly, letting your robe fall loosely around your shoulders. The embers glow softly, illuminating the objects you imagine scattered near the wall. A metal awl, a small iron knife, a bit of wool cloth folded neatly beside a hide. One well-supported fact in historical research is that metal tools once introduced through trade routes made tasks like hide scraping, sewing, and repairing lodge coverings far more efficient. A sharper blade created cleaner seams. A finer awl made smaller, stronger holes for stitching. You run your finger along the hide wall and imagine how much easier it became to shape these coverings with such tools. Your gaze shifts toward the fire pit, where a metal kettle hangs in your mind's eye. Before metal cookware became common, heating water required careful balance of stones and hides. But with a kettle, warm drinks could be prepared more quickly on long winter nights. You picture someone lifting a kettle from the embers, steam rising into the air. A warm drink before sleep became a small luxury that deepened comfort. You settle back, pulling your robe closer, and think about wool, a material that traveled through vast networks of trade. Some winter accounts mention people incorporating wool blankets into their bedding, layering them between buffalo hides. Wool breathed well, absorbed moisture, and added a soft warmth beneath heavier furs. You imagine brushing your hand across such a blanket, feeling the gentle fibers beneath your palm. Another small but intriguing detail comes to mind. Wool leggings, or cloth shirts, once acquired through trade, could be paired beneath hide garments to create a more adaptable layering system. The combination of traditional materials and new fabrics created a more flexible approach to cold. You sense how such clothing might make someone feel warmer even before stepping into the bedding. You turn your gaze toward a small pile of belongings near the entrance. Perhaps a tradecloth shirt hangs from a peg, the brightly dyed fabric adding color to the warm brown tones of the lodge. Such cloth, favored for its softness and vibrancy, became part of winter attire in many communities. It did not replace hides but complemented them, adding warmth without adding bulk. A topic that researchers enjoy discussing revolves around how these trade goods influenced the construction of tipis themselves. Some suggest that metal axes, for instance, allowed families to shape poles more quickly or cut replacement timber more efficiently during winter. Others argue that the core design of lodges remained unchanged regardless of trade goods. Sitting here, feeling the warmth drift around you, you suspect both views hold truth. Trade goods may not have altered the tipi's essence, but they certainly made the work lighter. You extend your hands toward the fire again, watching the glow brighten your palms. Another detail from historical accounts rises to mind. People sometimes used small metal containers or tins to carry embers during travel between seasonal camps. These containers helped preserve fire across distances, making it easier to start a warm blaze upon arrival. The idea feels ingenious, carrying a piece of warmth from one home to the next. You shift your weight and lean back on your hands, sensing how trade goods quietly wove themselves into everyday life. Even sewing patterns changed subtly with the introduction of metal needles. Stitches grew finer, hides lay flatter, liners hung smoother. Each improvement made the lodge just a little warmer, a little quieter, a little more efficient. Another image appears in your mind: beads glimmering in the firelight. While decorative, beadwork sometimes reinforced seams or strengthened certain parts of clothing, making winter garments more durable. You imagine the soft rustle of a decorated hide robe as someone settles into sleep, the tiny glass beads catching sparks of ember light. You adjust your robe again, letting it fall against your arms. Even the thread used for stitching hides could be influenced by trade cotton thread. When available, might be used alongside sinew to reinforce liners or clothing. Cotton stayed flexible in cold weather, making certain repairs easier and faster. You picture someone threading a needle by firelight, mending a seam just before bed, the work both practical and calming. A soft debate among historians often touches on how quickly trade goods were adopted into daily winter routines. Some argue adoption was rapid due to the efficiency these tools brought. Others maintain that traditional methods remained preferred, with new items used sparingly. Sitting here, you sense the truth is fluid. People adopted what helped, but kept what worked best. Winter shaped decisions, far more than novelty. You lie back once more, letting the hide cushion the back of your skull. The air glows faintly with firelight. You imagine wool cloth layered beneath your shoulders, metal pot warming broth in the embers, finely sewn hides draped around the lodge with tight seams made possible by sharper tools. All these small additions transform the lodge from comfortable to deeply nurturing. You think about how travel expanded access to trade goods. Horses, once introduced, accelerated the movement of people and materials. Families could carry more supplies, including items that improved winter heat, extra robes, better tools, surplus hides. A lodge in winter grew warmer not only through design but through the wealth of materials at hand. You glance upward again at the poles converging into darkness. A quiet smile touches your lips. These tools and goods did not erase the ancient wisdom of shelter. They simply enhanced it. Metal, wool, cloth, beads. Each one joined the long story of keeping warm in the coldest months. You curl deeper into the bedding. The fire hums softly. Your robe gathers heat again around your ribs. The lodge, enriched by old knowledge and new materials, feels complete. Warmth comes from many sources, some born in tradition, others carried from far away, all merging into a single night of comfort beneath a winter sky. You rest your palms on the bedding, feeling its warmth settle deeper into your hands, when the faint memory of movement stirs in your imagination. Not adult footsteps or the shift of someone tending the fire, but the quick, soft rustle of smaller bodies, children. Even in winter, even in deep cold, a teepee was alive with youthful energy before sleep, and those last bursts of play, those tiny games just before drifting off, held a purpose far greater than simple fun. They warmed the body, shook off the stiffness of the day, and helped little ones slide more easily into the long, sub-zero night. You shift onto your knees, adjusting the robe around your shoulders. The air is warm enough that you can almost picture a group of children at the far side of the lodge, silhouetted by the glow of the fire. One often mentioned element in winter accounts is that children rarely went to bed immediately after evening chores. They wriggled, chattered, giggled, and played gentle indoor games activities that kept their blood circulating so they wouldn't crawl into bed chilled. You can almost hear it now, the soft slap of small hands against hides, the muffled thump of a ball made from bundled cloth or stuffed hide. A simple game, but one played with careful awareness so nothing brushed too close to the hearth. Their laughter would rise and fall, warming the lodge through sound alone. You lean back on your hands and let the image grow. Maybe one child sketches shapes in the packed earth near the wall with a little stick, creating lines that disappear with each gesture. Another stacks small carved figures, tiny horses or people made from bone or wood, arranging them in small rows before knocking them gently aside. These quiet activities echoed through countless winter nights. A charming detail from some oral recollections describes how older siblings sometimes taught younger ones hand games that required memorizing patterns or tapping rhythms against the floor. These games strengthened fingers stiffened by the cold and encouraged coordination, while also keeping young minds occupied. You imagine a kid giggling when they tap the wrong pattern, and an older relative correcting them softly, their voice warm with patience. You shift your own legs beneath you, imagining how children sometimes raced from one side of the lodge to the other, but in tiny, silent steps, careful not to disturb the adults already settling in for the night. Those brief dashes, warm with excitement, stirred heat through their limbs, letting their bodies glow before the bedding wrapped around them. Another small observation preserved in early accounts notes that children frequently sprawled near the fire pit to warm their hands and toes after a burst of evening play. They'd extend small fingers toward the coals, wiggle their feet close to the heat, then scamper back to their games. Their energy warmed not just themselves but the lodge's atmosphere, giving the night a feeling of liveliness before sleep took over. You imagine one child tugging gently at the edge of a robe, asking a grown-up to check their sleeping spot. Maybe the bedding needs fluffing, maybe the hides need pulling closer, maybe they want someone's reassurance that the cold outside can't reach them in here. Those small gestures, those last requests before bed, were part of the nightly rhythm too. A topic that some researchers still discuss focuses on whether winter games held deeper meanings, teaching children subtle lessons about movement, survival, or behavior. Some argue the games were purely recreational. Others see them as early training in coordination, rhythm, or teamwork. Watching the imagined scene now, you sense the games served both purposes. Play warms the body, but it also warms the mind. You exhale softly, imagining children curled near the walls after their brief flurry of movement. Their cheeks would still be warm from play, their breath slowing, their bodies ready to sink into sleep without fighting the cold. You lean forward slightly and picture a child wrapping themselves in a robe and collapsing dramatically onto the bedding, pretending to fall into the deepest sleep imaginable. Another child might roll into a soft pile of hides, giggling until the warmth catches up to them. The fire glows gently across their faces. Their eyelids begin to droop. You stretch one leg out and feel the warm air brush over your shin. You can sense how a child would relax completely into this environment after using up the last of their energy. The bedding cradles them. The hides hug them. Their small bodies radiate warmth into the shared space. Another delightful detail remembered by some storytellers is that older adults sometimes encouraged children to play a little longer if their skin still felt cool to the touch. Run one more circle around the lodge, they might say, or tap your hands together until they feel hot. These moments were practical warmth-making disguised as play. You imagine a child obeying, bouncing around the tipi with sleepy determination. You close your eyes briefly and picture the final moments before all becomes still. A child crawls into the crook of a parent's side. Another snuggles beneath a thick robe, folding their legs tight. A small dog curls beside them, adding its heat to theirs. Within seconds, the day's last bit of energy fades into quiet breathing. You open your eyes again and feel the lodge's warmth deepen around you. The thought of those small games and movements makes the tipi feel even more alive. Children brought motion, laughter, and their own fiery brand of warmth into the space, shaping the lodge's atmosphere long after the fire dimmed. As the embers glow softly, you sense how these playful rituals were part of the winter rhythm. They kept little bodies warm. They soothed fears of the cold. They marked the gentle transition between wakefulness and rest. You pull your robe slightly higher across your chest. The fire hums, The bedding cradles your limbs. The memory of children's laughter lingers like a warm echo. And slowly, peacefully, the lodge settles back into stillness, holding every sleeper young and old in its soft embrace. You shift slightly in the bedding, letting the warmth settle deeper around your ribs, when the thought of children's laughter softens into something quieter, slower, older. The tipi might hum with youthful energy before sleep, but once the lodge settles and the night deepens, a different presence takes shape. The wisdom of elders drifts into the space like a second layer of warmth, subtle but steady. Their voices, their teachings, their careful guidance formed another line of defense against winter's cold. In this dim glow of embers, you can almost picture an elder seated near the hearth, the light brushing their cheekbones, their breath slow and thoughtful. You sit up a little, drawing your robe closer. One widely acknowledged truth in winter accounts is that elders carried knowledge essential for surviving bitter seasons. Their memories held patterns of storms, signs in the clouds, the behavior of animals, the shifting character of the land as temperatures dropped. You imagine one of them speaking softly, pointing with a gentle gesture toward the roof poles, as if naming each lesson etched into the structure itself. You lean forward, elbows resting on your knees, and recall another detail. Elders often showed younger family members how to check for drafts, how to feel the liner for shifting air, how to listen to the walls when wind pressed against them. These skills were not dramatic. They were quiet habits, little checks that prevented discomfort or danger long before either could appear. You run your hand along the hide wall now, the warmth steady beneath your palm, and you understand how powerful such small habits can be. A thoughtful memory from early winter accounts mentions elders teaching children to read the snow near the lodge, not just its depth, but its sound. Pressing a hand against snow could reveal how hard the wind had packed it. The crunch underfoot could hint whether the temperature was dropping or rising. You imagine an elder leading a child outside at dusk, pressing a palm into a drift, then nodding with the calm certainty that only experience creates. You settle back into the bedding and let your thoughts drift toward the hearth. Elders were often the ones who knew exactly how much fuel to add before sleep. Too much wood, and the fire smoked. Too little, and the lodge cooled too quickly. Their sense of equilibrium, learned slowly through countless winters, made nights more comfortable for everyone. You watch the embers now, noticing their soft breathing, and imagine an elder's hand adjusting a stick with perfect timing. A quiet debate among researchers sometimes centers on whether winter teachings followed formal instruction or flowed naturally through daily life. Some argue that elders led specific lessons during cold seasons. Others believe learning happened through observation, imitation, through simple proximity. As you sit here, wrapped in warmth, you sense that both approaches blended easily. The lodge itself was a classroom, and the winter night provided endless opportunities for guidance. You stretch your toes toward the fire, feeling heat fold around them. Another gentle detail comes to mind. Elders often reminded younger people to warm their feet and hands before sleep. Cold extremities could lower comfort for hours. A quick rub of palms together, a moment near the coals, a shake of the limbs to stir circulation, simple advice, yet vital. You mimic the motion now, rubbing your hands lightly until warmth blooms along your skin. You shift your gaze toward the roof poles. Stories from elders frequently included practical warnings disguised in narrative form. Tales about what happens when someone neglects the fire, or when bedding is placed too close to the wall, or when a storm is underestimated. These were not scoldings. They were gentle reminders wrapped in imagination, making wisdom easier to remember. You imagine an elder speaking softly, their voice low enough that the fire's crackle becomes part of the rhythm. Perhaps they describe a winter long past when a lodge nearly filled with drifting snow because someone forgot to secure the flap. Or they recount how a traveler lost his way because he misread the wind's direction. These stories carried warmth of their own, guiding each listener toward better choices. You recline again, letting your back sink into the bedding. The hide beneath you feels soft and warm. You imagine an elder running a hand along the same hide earlier, checking for dampness, adjusting its fold to ensure no cold pockets lingered. These small adjustments were second nature to those who had lived through many winters. A charming detail preserved in oral memories describes elders placing a hand behind a child's neck to test whether they were warm enough before sleep. The nape of the neck reveals chill faster than fingers or toes. If it felt too cool, the elder would tuck another hide around the child or shift their position closer to the fire's warm zone. That simple gesture now echoes in your mind, as you touch the back of your own neck. You inhale deeply, the scent of smoke and hide filling your lungs. The elders' wisdom was not only practical, it was emotional. They offered reassurance during storms, calming anxious children with soft voices. They watched for signs of cold stress among adults too proud to admit discomfort. They noticed things others missed. You feel that same sense of reassurance now, as if someone wise is sitting beside you, making sure you sleep warm enough. Another small but powerful memory from many winter stories is the elders' role in maintaining peace within the lodge. Emotional warmth matters as much as physical warmth. Harsh words, tension, or fear could make the space feel colder. Elders soothed those edges, weaving calm through the night with stories, humor, or quiet conversation. You sense that calm now, settling into your chest like a second layer of insulation. You pull your robe higher across your shoulders. The firelight dances on the walls. The lodge hums softly. You imagine the elder resting now, their role complete for the evening. Because of their guidance, everything feels secure. The liner is straight, the fire is banked well, the bedding is warm, the draft near the entrance has been checked, the children have settled, the night feels safe. You close your eyes slightly as the warmth deepens across your ribs. Elders shaped winter, not just through knowledge, but through presence. Their calm made the cold feel less sharp. Their memory of past winters made the present one less intimidating. The lodge breathes around you. You breathe with it. And in that slow, steady rhythm, you feel not just warmth, but wisdom, guiding you gently towards sleep. You breathe in slowly, letting the memory of the elders' calm settle over your shoulders when a faint thought nudges its way into your mind. Morning. Not yet here, not even close, but you can sense the shape of it in the quiet rhythm of the lodge. Dawn in a winter teepee was its own ritual, a gentle choreography of warming, tending, preparing, and preserving the comfort built through the long night. You shift on the bedding, imagining the first stirrings of movement just before sunrise, when the darkness softens, but the cold still clings sharply to the outside world. You sit up slightly, your robe sliding in a warm fold along your ribs. One well-documented observation from winter accounts is that someone usually rose before the others to coax the fire back to life. Not with loud scraping or frantic activity, but with quiet, practiced motions. You picture a figure leaning over the hearth now, brushing ash aside with a careful hand, uncovering the cluster of coals preserved through the night. The tiniest spark brightens as fresh air meets it. A handful of kindling follows, laid gently, patiently, until the pit glows once more. You stretch your hands toward the imagined flame. The warmth returns with a soft bloom, chasing away the coolness that lingered through the quietest hours. This early rekindling allowed everyone else to wake slowly, wrapped in warmth rather than cold shock. The lodge itself seemed to inhale with relief as the new flame flickered upward. Another detail echoes from early descriptions. Morning routines often involved adjusting the liner to refresh the airflow. After hours of slow breathing in the lodge, a slight shift of the liner could guide stale air upward and welcome a brief, controlled drift of fresh cold air from beneath the outer hide. You imagine someone lifting a section of the liner with practiced hands, feeling a small thread of coolness brush their fingers before the space settles into balance again. You rise to your knees and let your palms skim the wall. In many communities, people inspected the base of the lodge at dawn, making sure snow seals still hugged the perimeter tightly. The storm, the wind, or the quiet shifting of the earth through the night could loosen the packed snow. A gentle press of the palm here, a careful stomp of the foot there, reinforced the insulation for another day. You test the imagined seal now, feeling how firm and cold the snow would be beneath your hand. You shift your weight again, letting your robe fall loosely before pulling it closer. Another familiar dawn habit involved shaking out bedding to release moisture gathered through the night. Even warm hides can hold dampness from breath and body heat. A quick lift and shake allowed the bedding to dry in the rising warmth of the day. You picture yourself standing now, gripping the edge of a heavy robe, letting it billow gently as warmth loosens its folds. A topic sometimes discussed among researchers touches on whether households followed strict morning routines or simply adapted tasks as needed. Some say dawn habits were predictable and patterned. Others argue they were fluid, shaped by temperature, workload, or the previous night's challenges. As you imagine these motions now, the tasks feel natural, practical rather than ceremonial, shaped by the needs of the new day. Your gaze drifts toward the teepee's entrance. Someone would open the flap slightly to check the weather, not wide enough to let the cold rush in, just enough to glimpse the early sky. Dawn light might glow faintly behind snow clouds, or spill across the horizon in soft gold. Either way, winter mornings demanded awareness. A storm easing? Fresh snow piled high? Ice glistening in deceptive calm? These signs guided decisions for the day's work. You crawl closer to the bedding and smooth the top layer with your hand. Children might still be sleeping, tucked warmly beneath robes, their breath rising in tiny clouds. A small detail from winter stories mentions how adults often checked the warmth of a child's hands or cheeks before waking them, ensuring they were comfortable and safe. You imagine touching a small hand now, relieved to find it warm. You stand slowly and stretch, your limbs awakening in the lodge's warmth. You picture someone stepping outside briefly at dawn, a small but brave act, just to gather a few pieces of wood or check on the horses and dogs. Their breath would rise in sharp clouds. Their fingers would ache briefly from the cold, but stepping back into the lodge afterward would feel like sinking into a blanket of heat and familiarity. You tilt your head and listen. The fire crackles softly in your imagination. The hides rustle faintly. Morning in the lodge feels like a slow unfurling rather than a sudden awakening. People rise gradually, stretching beneath robes, murmuring to one another, brushing hair back from their faces. Another small detail surfaces from old notes. Some families shared warm broth or tea upon waking, heating it quickly in a pot placed near the early morning fire. The taste of warmth first thing in the day helped ease stiff muscles and sleepy minds. You imagine sipping from such a cup now, feeling heat curl gently down your throat. You sit again near the hearth and consider how dawn habits preserved warmth, not just for the morning, but for the next night. Adjusting bedding, tending the fire, checking the hides, smoothing the liner, each task formed a link in a cycle designed to keep cold at a respectful distance. The tipi did its part, and the people did theirs. You glance up toward the smoke hole where faint sky might show through. Morning light, filtered by rising warmth, would cast gentle patterns across the poles. These patterns marked the beginning of another winter day, the lodge strengthening itself for whatever weather would come. You draw your robe closer to your chest. The air inside the lodge feels balanced, almost serene. Dawn rituals are nearly invisible now, but their presence lingers. The fire glows brighter, the bedding is fluffed, the airflow refreshed, the snow seal secured. The tipi hums with quiet readiness, holding warmth like a promise. You settle back into the bedding with a soft sigh. Winter days required steady effort, but winter mornings carried their own warmth, one shaped by care, rhythm, and the wisdom to greet the cold with calm rather than fear. You settle deeper into the bedding, feeling the quiet strength of the tipi wrap around you like a final embrace, and a gentle awareness fills your chest. This is your last night on the plains. The final stretch of sub-zero darkness, the closing chapter of these long, cold hours. Outside, the wind has softened into a low sigh, as if winter itself has grown drowsy. Inside, the embers glow like small suns resting in their cradle of ash. The lodge feels warmer than ever, not because the fire is brighter, but because you've learned how all the pieces around you work together, how they breathe, how they protect, how they soothe. You stretch one leg beneath the thick buffalo robes, feeling the warmth gather around your calf. You angle your feet toward the fire the way you've learned, letting heat soak upward from the ember bed. One well-attested detail from historical winter descriptions is that the final hours before dawn tend to be the coldest. Families understood this and settled themselves carefully before sleep, drawing robes up high and ensuring every gap in the bedding was filled. You mimic that instinct now, tucking the robe closer beneath your chin. The air drifts around you in soft pulses. Warm air rises from the embers, curls behind the liner, and descends again like a quiet, circular breath. You listen to it. You feel its gentle touch. The warmth is subtle, steady, reassuring. It becomes the heartbeat of the lodge itself. You close your eyes halfway and let your fingertips skim the edge of the bedding, sensing how the layers beneath you have grown warm with your own body heat. For a moment, it feels as though the lodge and you are warming each other equally. A small recollection comes to mind, remembered from winter journals. People often slept lightly during the first part of the night, then more deeply toward morning, as the cold outside eased and the lodge's microclimate became more stable. That deep morning sleep was treasured, especially on the harshest days. You can feel sleep pulling at you now, in that same steady way, like a soft hand guiding you toward rest. But before you fully surrender to it, another quiet detail emerges. Some winter travelers wrote that on especially still nights, you could hear the snow shifting outside like a distant whisper. Not a storm, not a threat, just the settling of the world. You imagine that now. The faint crackle of snow adjusting itself around the lodge, thickening the insulation that holds you in warmth. You breathe deeper. The scent of smoke lingers, mild and sweet. The hide walls hold the fire's glow in soft, uneven ripples. The poles above you rise like a quiet wooden forest, converging toward the darkness of the smoke hole. A soft draft slips past your cheek, harmless and warm from its journey along the liner. You've come to recognize these movements, these rhythms. They feel like old friends now. Another detail rises, one preserved in both memory and scholarly debate. Some suggest that long winter nights carried a spiritual sense of togetherness. That warmth itself was considered part of life energy, shared among the people within the lodge. Others argue the effect was practical, not symbolic, a simple and elegant system for conserving heat. You rest between these ideas, imagining warmth as both science and spirit, something engineered with skill, yet felt with heart. You shift slightly and feel the robe adjust across your shoulders. A deep calm spreads through you. The tipi is warm not because any single feature dominates, but because every detail works in harmony. The fire, the liner, the hides, the snow, the bedding, the shared space, the shape of the structure, the placement of your body, all of it merges into a single glow. Your eyes drift from the fire to the door flap. You picture what morning will look like once dawn arrives for real. The flap lifting slightly as someone checks the sky, the first breath of cold slipping in, and then the warm breath of the lodge pushing it gently back out. Light will fall across the bedding in narrow shapes, stretching along the floor like golden fingers. But that is not yet. For now, the night holds steady. You tilt your head back and watch a single thread of warm air drift upward. You follow it until it vanishes into the dark space near the poles. You think of how many nights people have watched this same motion, in this same kind of shelter, for countless generations before you. A quiet detail preserved in oral traditions says that some people believed the smoke hole was not just ventilation, it was a kind of eye to the sky, a reminder that even in the heart of winter, connection to the world beyond the lodge remained open. You lie down again, resting your head on the softest part of the hide. Your breath slows, your thoughts soften. You feel the final warmth of the day settle around you like a heavy blanket. Outside, the wind whispers along the snow. Inside, the coals murmur back in a language older than memory. Your eyelids drift lower. The quiet fills your ears. The warmth holds steady, patient, unwavering. This is your last night. Yes, but you do not feel its ending. You feel its completeness. Everything that keeps you warm tonight has become part of you. And as the cold outside rests against the hide walls, gentle now instead of sharp, you let your body surrender to the deep, protected silence of the lodge. You breathe in once more, slowly, deeply, letting the final warmth of the lodge settle into your chest. The night feels softer now, the kind of softness that comes only after long hours of comfort and steady firelight. The air drifts in gentle waves above your skin, warm enough to soothe, cool enough to relax. Each breath becomes slower than the last, stretching into long, easy rhythms that calm the mind. Outside, the cold continues its silent wander across the prairie, but you no longer sense its sharpness. The thick hide walls mute the wind into a faint, distant murmur, almost like the hush of the sea. The snow packed around the base holds you in a cradle of stillness, keeping the warmth close, letting the world beyond fade into a distant blur. Inside, everything is quiet. The coals glow in a soft, almost sleepy red, their light pulsing in slow, gentle breaths. Shadows settle along the walls, stretching into softer shapes, fading little by little as the embers dim. Your bedding molds perfectly to your body, lifting you just enough, supporting you without effort, warming you in a steady, soothing embrace. You feel the heaviness in your limbs now, the pleasant weight that comes when sleep begins to wrap itself gently around your thoughts. Your shoulders loosen, your jaw relaxes, your breath sinks deeper. You let it happen, letting yourself drift with the slow lull of warmth, listening only to the faint crackle of the last glowing coal. There is nothing left to do, no cold to fear, no wind to guard against. The night is safe, the warmth is steady, the lodge holds you gently, as though it has always known how to help you rest. So close your eyes now, and let the final glow guide you into sleep.